There is a general sense in the population that current systems are insufficient. They express this sentiment with a desire for proportional representation or for something that isn't left or right politics, but is still democratic. They want a genuine third option, but they do not know what that third option should be. They cannot articulate it because the knowledge required to do so is hard to come by. We have seen that democratic systems throughout the world are easily infiltrated by foreign intelligence operations. We have seen democratic elections rigged and cheated upon. We have seen so called leaders cave to peer pressure. We have seen that just because somebody is elected does not mean that they are qualified for their position. Nation builders recognize these people as children, and yet the children lead the children, the blind lead the blind, with the assistance of an enemy. These are systemic problems, and they require a systemic solution. To come up with the idea of a triune democracy took 10 years of research across multiple disciplines, the invention of intellectual tools that work with known laws and can scale, the discovery and application of new laws, and the cultivation of an ability to take things up to a whole new level of thinking. Recall the full model of the self that was developed in the video Foundations in Consciousness. The thought life cycle is the sequence identity, rightness, feeling, mind, desire, reason, self. It has an exception at desire to mind, which is known as history repeats. The thought process is the sequence feeling, desire, reason, rightness. It is important that this not be disrupted, for it hinders adaptation and growth. Your conscience is the message from rightness to feeling. Your realizer is your ability to make realizations on topics and is the willful action of desire to reason. Your knower is your noetic parts, identity and self. Your thinker is your mental parts, rightness and reason. Your doer is your psychic parts, feeling and desire. The knower, thinker, and doer are three parts of one being, a trinity, you. Your parts are accessed via their faculties, which have their own specific function. All of this ultimately goes through your body via your mind to help you grow through your actions in the physical world. Your mind operates by focus and pulls in all other faculties and parts when it needs something done. You are identified by your boundary from the rest of consciousness, and it's your duty to protect it, which you do by employing self respect. Per the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, and in alignment with our scaling up strategy, we will now design a new democratic system that grants society itself the ability to think and reason its way through time. As with all system design activities, it helps to understand our requirements before undergoing the actual design process. We first and foremost want a system capable of uplifting people out of ignorance, perdition, and mind control. We want a system that can destroy the planetary tyranny through obsolescence. Percival said it best in his book, Democracy is Self-Government, that what we think of as a civilization is really just an outward veneer or gloss of culture. The inwardly cultured, refined, and strengthening of individuals in the civilization is lacking. Furthermore, we want a civilization capable of existing in permanence for as long as there are humans. And that means it must be able to adapt to the infinite game. We must ensure we have our fundamentals correct and that those fundamentals are taught to the people. The people must practice the fundamentals and embrace an ethos of discipline, control, self control, and direction, all of which leads into self government. Self governance is the rock upon which a truly real and genuine democracy is built. It is only on self governance that freedom and liberty can be guaranteed. We must recognize that the world is a forum for objects, actions, and events, and that each individual owns their own objects, actions, and events as per the law of thought. Our system and its accompanying nation must never trespass against that ownership. Objects are things like cars, houses, computers, and food. Ownership in objects is fairly simple to understand. Actions are what you do. You own your actions because you own your body and are in full control of it at all times. If you lose control of your body through whatever means, you are still responsible for the loss of control and any fallout. Events are what happens to you or what happens in nature. A lightning bolt in nature is an event. Most of the time, it does not affect anyone. Other people doing actions to you are events from your perspective. Being delivered food is an event for you and is an action for the deliverer. Receiving a paycheck for services rendered is an event. You own that event. Therefore, it is a trespass to intrude on that event. Therefore, to apply tax to that event is a trespass by a third party. We must also recognize that humanity is a traumatized species with abandonment issues endemic in its nature. This causes mass psychological damage with many behaviors that can be considered societal self hate, and this has to be addressed in order to move forward as a species. Our system must be designed to achieve this goal and must not do it through force or coercion. The system should follow the Hermetic axiom as above, so below, as within, so without. This is a scaling tactic that says the exterior design of the system should mirror the interior design of ourselves. We achieve two major goals with this strategy. All who look upon the system and its design will be looking at their own internal operation. It is my hope that such a tactic will inspire people to learn about themselves and encourage them to pursue the aforementioned goal of self governance as well as enlightenment. The second goal is that, in theory, we give the society itself the ability to think as an aggregate mass. Our internal system works with and processes thoughts to allow us to think. The external system works with people, each one representing a thought, and processes them in a similar way as the internal system so as to enable the society itself to think and then to choose the right thing to do. This system absolutely must contain anti corruption and anti infiltration features in its design. The West is dying because its systems were infiltrated and corrupted. And if you want a long lasting society, you need to make sure that does not happen. Corruption and infiltration can occur both from a cancer growing within the society and from the hostile takeover by a foreign intelligence operation. The system must be able to autonomously detect and thwart either activity in its ranks. Along with the requirements above is a further requirement for the system to maintain its own integrity. This means that only those who are qualified to access the system are able to access it. It is not enough to be elected to a position that allows one to access this system. You must also be qualified. Qualified means that your own internal system is operating properly without deviation and without influence and control by another. The system will test your being for such qualifications. Furthermore, as an aspect of quality control in what the system does is also required. Every issue that is looked at through the system must meet quality specifications to ensure it meets necessary baselines, conforms with the direction the society wants to go, and most importantly, to align with the law of what is right and true so that the society can continue to have a long lasting existence. Deviations at the societal level are fatal to the society. The most important requirement is that the system shall not place the people under its care in a state of perdition. Inasmuch as there can be rules for best practices, there are times when those rules need to be broken, and the best judgment of the one breaking them ought to be considered in its context. Where a rule is deliberately broken because the rule is wrong, special consideration should be invoked to determine why the rule is wrong and adjust it. The system shall be founded on respect for the people participating in it and operate in accordance with the character triad. This is to say that the system must recognize that it is a kind of guardian for people who are not yet able to govern themselves. It must nudge them towards the direction of self government because that is the only way democracy can truly work. The elites of today also recognize that people do not govern themselves. Their attitude is that such people deserve to be controlled and to get what they get. Sometimes the cure is worse than the disease, and the elites often ignore their own role in creating the situation they despise. The system shall be one of freedom. It shall encourage innovation and free enterprise, and of course, allow everyone to pursue the desires that they desire. In some situations, those desires will need to be contained a little bit in order to prevent the collapse of the society, especially when there are many unknowns. To that end, simulation zones with the full consent of all participants can be created where those desires can be explored sufficiently. The system should recognize that people in it will eventually outgrow it, like a child outgrows its parents' care. But this is not a parental relationship, and if we are not careful, we can trap people into thinking that it is normal to be governed by an external entity, and it is not normal and a bad idea. In other words, the system must not normalize dependency on it. It should passively communicate to everyone certain markers and waypoints, but not teach them so that the people know that there is still stuff out there beyond their present position and situation in life, stuff that is known and that they should also know. The emphasis on passivity is to prevent people learning by rote. They must learn by thinking about it instead, because that is the only skill that will truly help them. Thus, I suggest art projects and engraved architecture for this purpose. The system should recognize that those who have been a part of it and successfully learned to govern themselves, especially those who have learned to live beyond the system, not through any kind of theft, but through mastery of self control. These people have demonstrated that they are qualified to live by their own rules and no longer need those of the nation that raised them. Much like a healthy child leaving the nest willfully, these are the most valuable humans that have been built and refined. They are the ones with the strongest characters. The system ought to recognize them as internationally protected persons and support them as they technically form their own state, a state of one. This helps the nation maintain peaceful and friendly relations with these people and helps them advance the ideals of true self sovereignty. The system should be able to operate well in a steady state capacity or a period where there is no change. Whereas in the present world, growth is a requirement of pretty much every system, this system should seek to find a place of homeostasis and spend most of its time there. Times of change are actually fairly rare, and energy is better spent elsewhere than on constant change. When change is called for, though, the system should adapt to a change mode through some kind of morphogenesis. An example is a tree. Trees utilize a stress tolerance growth strategy. They grow very slowly, but when they do grow, they keep that growth and maintain it. Trees have different modes as well. The most obvious are when the leaves are on versus when the leaves are off, as well as flowering time, pollinating time, and fruit time. With all of the requirements in mind, let us now state the purpose of this system. The primary purpose of this system is to facilitate self knowledge of the people so that true freedom and enlightenment can be enjoyed by all. The purpose of this system is to allow the sovereigns of a nation to manage the affairs of their state in accordance with the law of thought, the law of nations, the character triad, the age of reason and discretion, and all other universal laws and their principles, both known and unknown, so that everyone in the nation may benefit from a peaceful and long lasting civilization. By gathering awareness of laws and staying as close to them as possible, the system will be successful in its purpose. It is my hope that once realized, this system will produce a civilization that can last millions of years, be capable of space exploration and high technology, be wise and explore high spirituality, and be a place where people can enjoy true freedom. It is intended to facilitate the opening up of new possibilities for experience that have not been available to the people of Earth in a wise and responsible manner. It is intended to support the people as they continuously discover and grow beyond their limits, and to make sure they know that it is possible to do so, as well as desired and necessary. By being such a beacon of hope and of taking things to a whole new level, the purpose of this system is ultimately to starve the global tyranny system of its fuel, thereby collapsing and destroying it. The purpose of this system is to uplift humanity and to destroy the planetary tyranny holding it back. The concept behind a triune democracy is actually fairly simple. You take your own self and scale it up to the societal level. That is the simplicity of the design. It has a complex twist, however. You are a very complex being, and that turns into a complex system. It gets even more complicated if you do not know how you work. We start with the parts. Each part becomes an office. Now, instead of 2 or 3 branches of government, we have 7 primary offices. Already, we have more to work with than existing systems, and we are just getting started. We're going to rename some parts to better adapt their function to the societal level. A society cannot feel, but it can work with sensors and data, so the Office of Feeling becomes the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. The Office of Desire sounds a little awkward, so we will call it the Office of Priorities to better reflect its function and the fact that there can really only be one ruling desire at a time, hence prioritization. A nation cannot really desire, but it can prioritize proposals that represent desires. A nation does not have a self, so the Office of Self will be renamed to the Office of Expression so that the nation has an avenue for expressing its unique character. A nation does not have a body, it has a territory, and it cannot do anything except through the people of the nation. The body part becomes a realm and/or contractors depending on which aspect of the system we are working with. The interface between the body and our internal being is our mind. It is how commands are relayed. Mind does not make sense in this context, but manifestation does, especially when those commands are to build something, so we rename it to the Office of Manifestation. The seat of consciousness, you, now becomes a council, the Council of Witness. It keeps the witnessing aspect of yourself. Finally, just as you are protected by your boundaries, the nation is protected by its borders, so there is a slight rename there. There is one last adjustment. When you are in control of yourself, you send commands to your body. You are not under control of nature, and therefore the feeling mind does not overpower your mind and take control of your body. You are not under the control of your desires, as in, your desires do not originate from nature, therefore the sequence from mind to desire and back has no relevance. Only you control your mind and body directly. This translates into only the Council of Witness contacting the Office of Manifestation directly. To get a proposal to the Council of Witness, we look for it to mature, and the Office of Priorities then forwards it to the Council of Witness. Instead of thoughts being processed by this system, it now processes proposals that each represent a multitude of thoughts. Now we have a triune democracy. We will spend the next major section of this video going through each part in the system in depth at a micro level, and then the following major section explaining how the system works as a whole at a macro level. The final major section will contain additional supplementary concepts that are useful to a triune democracy. We will now go through each of the major parts of this system in the same order as the law of thought. All things in nature require an identity to live and be. A nation is no different. Without an identity, what was considered a nation will be dead, and nature's decay processes will take over as its corpse is infested and fed upon. The office of identity is the scaled up version of the identity part of your being. It serves the same purpose, but for the society. This office anchors the very identity of the nation in nature. The office has the following functions and duties: anchor the nation's identity, define the nation's identity, define the nation's culture, evaluate proposals for alignment with the national identity, protect the national identity, protect the system, issue and administer character tests. Defining the national identity is typically a job for a nation's founders, though of course updates can be made to it over time. Anchoring the national identity just means holding it in national memory and ensuring it is not lost, which can be done with a museum or library or so. It is critical to answer what makes this nation unique compared to all other nations, for it is the uniqueness that defines the identity. If a nation wants to design cultural activities, that is the part of the role of the Office of Identity. Culture is actually very important because it affects the identity of the nation and has to be properly defined and aligned with law. Cultural matters need a purpose to them that is meaningful to the people, which itself stems from a natural law of some kind. Some examples of cultural matters include defining a language, holidays, beauty standards, etc. Do not define any culture that is a thought, such as any kind of religion, for that would not be in accordance with using the law of thought competently and would eventually place the people in perdition. Similarly, any proposals received as part of the operation of this system are to be evaluated in the same manner as any cultural initiative. That is to say, nothing that binds people to a thought, nothing that violates a known law, nothing that violates the nation's identity, and nothing that would jeopardize the nation's identity. Remember, without a national identity, the nation dies. The Office of Identity has both a defining and protection function for the nation's identity. Speaking of protection, part of protecting the nation's identity is policing this system. The system must be protected from ignorance, corruption, and infiltration, for each of these avenues will surely end it. The Office of Identity ensures the integrity of each part of the system and the system as a whole. To that end, this office maintains its own police force that answers only to the Office of Identity. The police force has the following abilities and duties: inspect every part of the system for proper operation and protocols. Investigate anybody in the system on suspicion of ignorance, corruption, or infiltration. Remove people from the system who are deemed ignorant, corrupt, or an infiltrator. It does not matter if somebody has been elected if they are found to be corrupt or incompetent. They will be removed even on the day of their election. The Office of Identity guarantees quality control and proper operation of the system in accordance with the national identity. Where things are found to be wrong or lacking, it must eject those things or people from the system, otherwise, it could become corrupt and fail. To be clear, it is not the role of the identity police force to protect the people in the system from external threats. Their role is solely to protect the system itself from the people running it. If they lose confidence of an entire part of the system, they can eject the whole thing and the office can build a new part to serve that function in accordance with the Constitution. To help guarantee the impartiality of this office and thwart any risk of manipulation, the people who work in this office, including its police force, should have accommodations for themselves and their immediate families where their security can be guaranteed. This is intended to prevent blackmail of these people by threatening any of their family. I would suggest accommodations in a palace. Another function of this office is the issuance and administration of character tests. Character tests are one of the key metrics that are used to protect the system. Nobody should have access to this system without achieving a significant minimum score on the character test. Character tests measure the proper operation of one's being and are necessary to ensure there is no foreign blackmail possibility or coercion of any kind. It takes people of a certain caliber of character to resist those things. The Office of Identity answers only to the Council of Witness, and even then, certain constitutional changes cannot be made without the explicit authorization of the Emperor or Empress. Just as we individually each have our own mental parts that can determine right from wrong, so too must a nation have a part that determines right from wrong. The Office of Rightness is a scaled up version of your rightness part. It will communicate to its corresponding feeling part the rightness or wrongness of any proposed policy, thereby giving the society a systemic conscience. This office has the following duties and functions: determine rightness or wrongness of any policy, proposal, directive, or input. Communicate results to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. It sounds like a simple task, but there is quite a bit involved. It is not always apparent that a proposal will be harmful. As a reminder, all actions that cause harm are wrong actions. All remaining actions, those that cause no harm, are right actions. Fundamentally, this office must answer the question, will this cause harm, of every policy, proposal, directive, or input that comes its way. The kind of harm that the Office of Rightness deals with is a global harm to all life forms. It considers harm to the physical well being of all life, the psychological well being of all life, the mental well being of all life, and the noetic well being of all life. It considers the environment and ecology and damage to such as well, as plants are also life forms, and we do actually exist in environments that support us. The Office of Rightness also evaluates potential harm to other nations and societies. It is easy enough to consider whether a proposal will cause harm to an individual human being or group of beings. When it comes to societies, additional work must be undertaken to ensure the proposal does not violate any treaties or agreements the nation has with any other nation. As external treaties and agreements with other nations supersede the nation's local proposals, great care must be taken with regard to which agreements and treaties are signed. For this reason, a nation should not sign treaties and agreements with other nations unless absolutely necessary. Where the answer to the question of will this cause harm is unknown, and the people in the office are unable to think, reason, or otherwise forecast and project potential harms, the Office of Rightness may create simulations to determine the answer. Simulations may be via statistical and systems science models, computer simulations involving lots of players, or a zone in real life designed for testing this particular proposal with the explicit consent of all people involved. In order to ensure no harm is done to the nation itself, the Office of Rightness can forward the proposal to the Office of Identity to verify that the proposal is in line with the identity rules. The Office of Identity forwards it back to the Office of Rightness with its response in this case. The Office of Rightness is autonomous and does not answer to any other office or council, though it reports to the Council of Witness. It may determine whatever other means it needs to evaluate, simulate, think through, and ultimately answer the question, will this cause harm? Ideally, without causing harm in the process. The office must respond to proposals sent its way and deliver the answers to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. The Office of Rightness shall not and must not defer to any other authority to determine the rightness or wrongness of a proposal. To do so would subjugate and betray the nation and place it as a whole into perdition. The Office of Rightness shall not and must not contact the Office of Reason directly. It must not contact the Office of Reason in any way, for such action would introduce corruption into the system and would cause its ultimate destabilization and demise. We use our feeling part to interact with nature, and that includes the senses via our body's organs. This system is not alive, however, and cannot do that, but it does represent the intellectual part of a being of the entire nation, and it can still gather data. The Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data is a data gathering office that tries to do what the feeling part does for each of us. It has the following duties: gather as much data as possible related to the proposal, perform rudimentary tests on the proposal to see how it performs, pass all of this data to the Office of Priorities. When gathering data, such data can include public sentiment, impacts on various people and places, whatever kinds of analyses are appropriate, focus groups, surveys, and scientific data observations, measurements, and calibrations. The Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data may also set up passive data collection sensors in various places for various purposes, such as weather stations, radars, and any other kinds as may be needed. This office collects data so that other offices can perform their functions well. All data collected by this office is public to the people in the nation. As part of its data collection duties, it may be prudent to gather data on the activities, disposition, culture, communication, and genetics, and any other pertinent information of other nations. Such is the function of intelligence gathering agencies. Where this function is employed, I must stress that it is passive data collection only. It shall not cause interference by spreading lies or altering events in a foreign or domestic nation in any way. Because of the duty to work with massive quantities of data, this office will need a knowledge management system capable of supporting its mission. You can think of it like a physical version of the Akashic records, where such records are a noetic version of all data you can access mentally, with perhaps Percival's thinking technique at the end of Thinking and Destiny. Along with sensory data, collecting data about law and how things work is very beneficial. How does it work is a question that functions as a key to unlock knowledge about anything and everything. The office should also attempt to acquire as much data for how things work as is possible so that such data can be used by the nation. How does it work is a question. It is a very powerful question. It is the key that unlocks everything. How does it work is an intellectual tool that serves the function of a key. Like a key, it can unlock any lock, open any door, and in fact, open whole new realms of knowledge. Stuck on a puzzle? Learn how the puzzle works and you will see the solution. Afraid of something? Learn about the thing you are afraid of. Knowledge dispels fear. How does it work isn't just about situations. It can be applied to anything or concept. How does your body work? Your immune system? Your cells? That's very relevant today in 2021. How does your psyche work? How does your mind work? How does knowledge itself work? Information, data, and how we feel about what we know. How does our spirit work? Our soul? How does the universe work? How does our reality work? How does a law work? How does it work is a foundational question. It is a starting point that allows you to see where to go next. Where you go next is you track it over time. See what it does. See how it behaves. Does its behavior line up with your knowledge and expectations? Can you predict what it will do next? What you're doing when you track it over time is you are learning even more about how it works and are refining your initial information. This helps you perfect your knowledge of the topic. You literally are a tracker and you're on the hunt, but you're hunting for a thought. You're hunting for knowledge. Sometimes the topic isn't just one thing, it's a bunch of things together. So you employ this tactic for each of those things individually and then take a step back and see how the whole thing works together again over time. That gives you meta knowledge about the topic. The Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data answers and reports to the Council of Witness. It receives proposals from the Office of Rightness, adds relevant data to it, and passes it along to the Office of Priorities. The Office of Priorities emulates your desire mind. If you will recall, desires operate in a hierarchy such that only the ruling desire has your attention and focus. It is only the ruling desire that gets done at that moment in time. As well, you must have control over your desires so as not to be intoxicated by desires for power, fame, wealth, food, and sex. The Office of Priorities analyzes a set of incoming proposals and assigns priorities to them. It also filters out proposals that are so low priority that there is no chance of them getting done. Proposals that pass this sorting and filtering process are sent to the Office of Reason in priority order. What determines priority? There are many factors. A sense of urgency among the authors and the people in this office, directions from the Council of Witness, a vote of people involved among every active proposal, a triage function that the office provides, a vote by everyone in the nation in some circumstances. Proposals may also be debated upon with the winner getting priority. The Office of Priorities is the closest thing this system has to the debate and presentation formats that exist in other democratic systems. It may invoke these functions as it needs, but it must be recognized that there are no representatives to do the debate or presentation for you. You are responsible for your own debate and presentation. This is where the system gets its direct democracy flavor. If you are successful, your proposal or presentation will be assigned a priority. The more successful, urgent, and needed is your proposal, the higher the priority. If you are unsuccessful, your proposal will not be given a priority, in which case it will not even enter the system to be refined and implemented. It will be rejected. As your proposal advances in the system, you are likely to be contacted multiple times for more information and refinements to it. The triage function analyzes the impacts a proposal will have and the problems it solves. It can recognize the urgency of a proposal and assign a priority. Proposals can be classified generally as three types: completely new legislation, an improvement to existing legislation, as in new capability, and a fix to existing legislation. Of these types, they can be assigned any priority from critical to nice to have to polish and anywhere in between. Proposals before the office are public information within the nation. Any member of the nation may intervene when a proposal is raised. Intervention automatically triggers a debate, presentation, or even trial and includes both the proposer and the intervener. There are any number of outcomes, including the proposer winning, the intervener winning, a compromise, a refined proposal, a withdrawal, or even something completely new. As the Office of Priorities works with the needs and wants of the nation, it stands to reason that it should have a sense of what the needs and wants of the nation actually are in order to assign proper priorities. To that end, it can work with the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data to ascertain the needs and wants of the nation. That office can monitor social media, news, publications, and any other form of communication for any such needs, wants, and pain points. However, the Office of Priorities must be cautious that those things do not influence it in a direction that is harmful to the nation. It must still operate according to the dictates of the offices of identity and rightness. As well, it should be conscious of the law of thought and be careful that it does not pass along a proposal that would take the nation over the edge of a mental cliff. The Office of Priorities answers and reports to the Council of Witness. It receives proposals from the general public, the Council of Witness, and the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. It prioritizes and filters proposals set forth before it and passes them along in priority order to the Office of Reason. The Office of Priorities shall not and must not contact the Office of Rightness directly. The Office of Rightness is a control for the Office of Priorities. The Office of Priorities must not direct the Office of Rightness in any way, for such action would introduce corruption into the system that would cause its ultimate destabilization and demise. The Office of Reason mimics at scale the function of our reasoning mind. Its duty is to think through the issues before it, to consider impacts and how they could be implemented. This is a major analysis function on the proposal. The office must break the proposal down to its component parts and understand how it works in order to effectively reason out how it should be implemented. Proposals are written by the general public and are written in the common language. The Office of Reason converts them to the legislative language used by the nation. It must take great care to ensure the language and implementation is consistent with the nation's constitution and laws and that no errors are introduced. All legislation must be clear in language, readability, and intent. There must not be any doublespeak, excessively long sentences, or confusing sentences. There must not be any backdoors or loopholes that could be exploited. There must not be any vague or deliberately open-ended language either. The Office of Reason tries to figure out the why and how of the proposal. It must index the proposal against relevant thoughts, attach information about those thoughts to the proposal, and determine how the proposal contributes to the thought or knowledge about the thought. An objective of the Office of Reason is to try to build out the entirety of a particular thought so that balanced and full spectrum policies can be achieved. Where the balancing is successful, the Office of Reason can balance the proposal according to the path chosen by the Council of Witness. For example, if the Council decides that it wants to fix policy at 2/3 conservative, 1/3 liberal, then the Office of Reason can adjust the disposition of the proposal to be in line with that directive. Should the Council later change direction to be more liberal for a time, the Office of Reason can adjust new proposals to fit this directive. It can only do this, however, if it has a full understanding of the thought behind the proposal. Where it is unable to determine the thought, aim, or how the policy contributes, the Office of Reason must not execute the balancing function. This balancing function allows the nation to consciously calibrate itself according to its current location in time and space and thereby avoid mass confusion and policies that would send it off a cliff into civil war. The Office of Reason answers and reports to the Council of Witness. It receives proposals from the Office of Priorities, processes them in the order that they are received, and passes them along to the Office of Rightness, creating a circuit. The Office of Reason may contact the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data for information, knowledge, and data with regards to how things work, and it may ask questions of the office, but it may not direct the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception data in any way. Balanced proposals that are accepted into legislation may be forwarded to the Office of Expression for its review. The Office of Expression is concerned with expression of the nation's personality and character according to its identity. This office is concerned with expression matters in domestic and foreign affairs, as well as architectural and even military expressions. The Office of Expression has a working relation with the Office of Identity. The Office of Identity focuses on developing some abstract concepts related to the nation's identity. For example, let's say the Office of Identity says to use the golden ratio for beauty standards. It will come out with the definition for the golden ratio and explain how it works. The Office of Expression then takes the golden ratio and comes up with architectural beauty standards, for example, that utilize this concept. The Office of Expression takes abstract concepts created by the Office of Identity and implements them in whatever manners are appropriate, such as the architectural beauty standards example. The same could be done with military strategies as another example. They are more concrete expressions of abstract ideas, but they are still abstract. The Office of Expression coordinates with the Office of Manifestation to make them physical. A key feature of the Office of Expression is the ability to adopt modes in the form of personality or character archetypes. There are 12 possible archetypes that a human being can have, such as warrior, lover, artist, etc., though I leave it as an exercise to the viewer to research and understand this topic. The supported number of archetypes must be 12 and not any other number because it is significant to the construction of a triune self, which we want to inspire the people to realize. As a result of modes, the nation can adopt personality expressions. Normally, the personality of the nation is the aggregate sum of its people, but why would we want to force a specific expression? Sometimes certain situations call for specific capabilities that certain personalities are better at dealing with than others. For example, in times of war, you might want to go to the hero personality, which would express itself in the manifestation of economic policies, cultural policies, foreign policies, funding allocations, military dispositions, and so on. In other times, when, let's say, you want to focus on innovation or inspiration, you might use the creator archetype, and the nation's policies adapt to facilitate creation. The Office of Expression maps out, maintains, and defines the personality archetypes for the nation so that they can be implemented whenever they are needed. A wise council of witness might cycle through all 12 in a round robin style, though I leave that decision to them. What about now in 2021 during the pandemic? I might suggest a sage archetype to focus on acquiring knowledge, which will in turn lead to the best way to deal with the virus. Hint, vitamin D. There are many uses for programming the nation to operate according to predefined modes. In addition to personality types, I also suggest following a stair-step progression for standard of living. There are two modes in this paradigm, horizontal and vertical. Horizontal mode maintains steady state operation over time. There are no changes to policies during this time while the nation researches and prepares to implement the next level. When it is time to implement the next level, the nation goes to the vertical mode and makes the new policies and builds out the new standard of living. Then it goes back to horizontal. The stair-step modes can be combined with the personality archetypes, and it might even be ideal for the nation to cycle through each combination. The Office of Expression defines the various supported modes that configure the nation's systems and implements them when they are activated, but the decision to activate which mode rests with the Council of Witness. An emphasis on personality modes can actually help a people develop themselves. We all incarnate with a specific archetype, and when a mode for a specific archetype is in play, we can rise to our strengths in a big way. Suddenly, everything we need to engage in work associated with that archetype is funded. Your baseline needs are met while you focus on the work of the archetype, and any support you need from the nation is granted. You can think of it like a temporary enhancement to your abilities, or a buff in video game parlance. During the creator archetype, artists and inventors don't starve in exchange for national invention. During the Jester archetype, it's party central while the nation benefits from a big morale boost. During the Caregiver archetype, the people experience the true meaning of service to others. National personality modes are a new kind of experience that can be had, which will facilitate a whole lot of new ways to learn about ourselves, which is the whole point of this system. It is another way to inspire people to be their very best self and explore their adept archetype to its fullest potential and balance out all of the archetypes over time. is how we, as a nation, facilitate further development and refinement of our beings to one day advance to an even higher level. The Council of Witness symbolizes you in this system. Specifically, it symbolizes that aspect of yourself that witnesses everything and can be thought of as your true self. The Council witnesses the life of the nation. It takes in the life of the nation, its current aspirations and struggles, and plots a long term course for the nation in the reality through time. They are the captains of the national ship. There are 24 normal seats and one special seat on the council. The 24 are balanced by race and sex so that there are 12 pairs, a man and a woman from each race. There is no such restriction for the 25th seat so long as the character test and trials are passed. The council is composed as follows. The special 25th seat is occupied by an emperor or empress. This is the most powerful position in the entire nation as it has the ability to command the nation as a dictatorship if so necessary. Every nation leaves this door open because you never know when the possibility could be needed. Emperors can be used as agents of great change, but with great responsibility comes great trials to be passed. The position is guarded by the most difficult character test imaginable, with a final set of questions being trials where a wrong answer means death. The trial questions should be separated and each should be encased in a highly secure shrine, vault, tomb, or temple of some kind, with a chamber set up to facilitate the question, or puzzle, or problem. But remember, it is a test of character. Each trial chamber requires a key to enter it, but that key should be broken and distributed amongst the guards of the shrine, who may issue their own test before giving their key, or destroy their key if under threat. The guards serve in their positions until death and are on the nation's payroll, which shall not be revoked. The guards answer to no one, and they are fully committed to their duty of protecting the trial. There should be multiple ways to answer the trial, but only the correct way completes the trial. All other answers result in death. It must be this way in order to ward off probing and to prevent psychopaths and manipulative enemies from accessing the position and destroying the nation. As a result, I expect that most of the time the position of Emperor Empress will be vacant, and that is intended. The nation should operate in a steady state fashion with a 24-person council giving unanimous and balanced consent most of the time. The 25th is really only for times when great change is needed. That being, whomever they may be, must build themselves up to be qualified for the position, have a firm conviction in their mission, and have indomitable will to accomplish it, as I have done to be able to research, design, and build this template and its accompanying nation. The Emperor Empress is the only one who can invoke the ruler archetype. The ruler archetype grants the Emperor Empress the ability to issue orders to the Office of Manifestation with only one signature, theirs. It also unlocks the core parts of the nation's framework and constitution for changes. The Emperor Empress may change and rewrite the whole national structure if they so wanted. Great care must be taken should any action unlocked by the ruler archetype be invoked. The nation is like a baby in his or her arms when the ruler archetype is invoked and is highly programmable. The Emperor Empress must understand the system so well and the consequences of any changes they make. A wise emperor or empress will ratify any constitutional changes with the people. Due to the seriousness of this position, should anyone attempt to seriously usurp the position without having completed the character test and all of his trials, they are to be executed immediately. When there is a sitting emperor or empress, he or she should take care that the character test and its trials are in good working order for the next emperor or empress before he or she leaves the position either by death or resignation. The Council of Witness is balanced by race and sex. It has support for 11 pureblood races by majority population, and the 12th spot is reserved for the remainder plus mixed races. Each race submits 2 representatives, a man and a woman, to represent the interests of the race. These representatives will hold the rank of king and queen of that race within that nation. In this way, the nation is properly able to consider and handle the needs of each race and sex in its territory so that no trespass will occur against any of them. The manner in which a king or queen is placed on the council is left up to each race to determine. Some races may prefer democratic elections, others may prefer electoral colleges, others may prefer the strongest among them, others may prefer royal lineage, and still others may prefer direct combat challenges. It is also possible and permissible for the architects of the nation to determine by what process a king or queen is placed on council, although there is something to be said for allowing a race to self determine its representation in this system. Everyone on council must achieve a high score on the character test, though they do not need to endure the trials. Though a race may put forth its best candidate by election, etc., that does not guarantee that they are qualified for the position. Elections do not guarantee qualifications. Thus, council members are qualified by the character test. Thus, the council is composed of 12 kings and 12 queens. It is important to understand that the rank of king or queen is not a rank of command over their race. They do not rule over their people. They witness their people's development and they represent them on council. The council altogether makes a decision to direct the nation, which ultimately affects the races. The Office of Priorities submits a completed proposal to the Council of Witness for ratification. The Council operates by unanimous consent. All 24 signatures are required to ratify a proposal before it can be sent to the Office of Manifestation. Council does not meet in a meeting room or a briefing room. It meets in a special room dedicated to its purpose. The room shall be beautiful. It shall contain several large and retractable view screens from around the room for communication and visualization of data. Council sits at a large circular or arc table in the center of the room with a large opening in the middle for presentations by visitors. The table must not be rectangular or sharply angled, and caution should be used if it is placed at a level above where visitors stand. This room has more in common with the bridge of a starship in Star Trek than it does a room where people lead from a desk. Council does not lead from a desk. The room should function more like a war room than it does a meeting or briefing room, although without the war. The room shall support council in cooperatively planning long-term direction and strategy for the nation. To that end, dedicated stations or even breakout rooms can surround the exterior walls of this room. There may or may not be space for an audience. I leave this last requirement as optional, but if you do include an audience, you'll have to think through the design very carefully to maintain beauty and function. The room should be spacious and airy and not cramped or closed in, because this is a room where very critical thinking occurs, and space, beauty, and capability enable effective thinking. The Office of Manifestation is the action office in this system. It is the office that brings the proposals into reality for the people. It accepts ratified proposals from the Council of Witness in only two forms: a 24 signature unified ratification from the kings and queens of the council, or a one signature order from the emperor empress, if and only if the ruler archetype is engaged. Notice that if the ruler archetype is not engaged, the emperor or empress does not have the authority to contact the Office of Manifestation. His or her signature is not counted among the 24 council members under normal circumstances. In order to bring forth a proposal into the realm of the physical, the Office of Manifestation organizes reality by type of matter: radiant, airy, fluid, and solid. You know these as the archaic elements: fire, air, water, and earth. The thought of above and below is applied to the organization so that the office can accurately cover all scenarios. Above below specifies a dividing line that separates when one is operating within a material below and another material outside of it above. The earth element is subdivided into that which is on the surface and that which is under the surface, subterranean. The water element is subdivided into that which is on the surface of the water, surface ocean, and that which is underwater, oceanic. The air element is subdivided into that which is in the air, the sky, and that which is above the air, outer space. The fire element, representing radiant matter and not actually physical fire, is subdivided into that which is in this dimension and that which is in other dimensions. Anything radiative, such as radiation, is included in the fire element. All of the above is contained within the free will universe. The subdivisions are hereafter known as realms. The person in charge of implementing a proposal in a specific realm has the rank of prince or princess. This is a technical leadership role that requires they have a full understanding of the realm and its elements that they are working in. The specific titles are as follows: Prince or Princess of the Lumiverse, Radiant Light, Other Dimensions; Prince or Princess of the Lifeverse, Radiant Life, This Dimension; Prince or Princess of the Airyverse, Space; Prince or Princess of the Skyverse, the Sky; Prince or Princess of the Navalverse, the surface ocean; Prince or Princess of the Fluidverse, oceanic; Prince or Princess of the Terraverse, the surface; Prince or Princess of the Subterraverse, subterranean. It is possible that the princes and princesses could be working with elemental beings of their element. They should possess the character and spiritual development required to enable this kind of communication, and at the very least, they'll have to achieve a high character score. They should be conscious of the fact that working with an elemental being is like working with a foreign nation, and they should be as diplomatic and as courteous as possible. As the roles of prince and princess are technical positions, people can apply for them or they can be appointed by council. If they are hired via application, the council does the interviewing and makes the decision to hire. Princes and princesses answer and report to the Council of Witness. There is a ranking to the princes and princesses, just as there is a ranking to the types of matter. The ranking goes radiant, airy, fluid, solid, and then above, below in each. Thus, among the princes and princesses, the prince or princess of the Lumiverse is the highest rank, and the prince or princess of the Subterraverse is the lowest rank. I'm not sure if that will ever be important, but this is how it is in case it becomes an issue. The ranking is also intended to capture the fact that each type of matter exists within the higher matter so as to enable humanity to discover more of the universe. As the princes and princesses are organized by types of matter, their domain covers every planet and universal body within the territory of the nation. This template isn't limited strictly to a single planet, although it can be used for such. Under each prince or princess are dukes and duchesses for each planet, moon, or large space station in their realm. This position is a bit redundant when there is only one planet in the nation, but it is included for future proofing. Dukes and duchesses serve a grouping function for their territory. They support administration and coordination of the marquises and marchionesses under them with the prince or princess above them. Their role is primarily facilitative. The prince or princess works with the duke or duchess. The duke or duchess relays the directive to the relevant marquis and marchioness on their planet, moon, etc. Dukes and duchesses are promoted to their position after first being a marquis or marchioness. Alternatively, if the planet is being colonized for the first time, the duke or duchess is appointed by the prince or princess. They must retake a character test and achieve a high score to prove their qualification. Marquises and marchionesses head up the actual work of manifestation in a particular realm, on a particular planet, moon, large space station, and so forth. Beneath them are companies, corporations, organizations, guilds, and any other such body that does the actual work requested. Marquises and marchionesses are ultimately responsible for the safety of their realm, its territorial integrity, the standard of living, the economy of their realm, and everything else that happens under their care. The number of marquises and marchionesses available on a planet depends on which realms are available. Most territorial bodies will have marquises, marchionesses of the Terraverse and of the Subterraverse. If there are buildable bodies of water, marquises or marchionesses of the Navalverse and of the Fluidverse will be available. Note that oceans don't necessarily have to be composed of water. If there is an atmosphere or if the planet is gaseous, a marquis, marchioness of the Skyverse will be available. The orbital space around the planet will allow a marquis, marchioness of the Airyverse to be available. If the planet contains a portal or any kind of phenomena, either natural or technological, that facilitates work in other dimensions, a Marquis Martianus of the Life Verse will be available. Stable access to other dimensions will make available a Marquis Martianus of the Lumiverse for this planet. Note that some plasma phenomena may enable radiant interactions. The physics in each realm are different and require different ways of doing construction, hence the breakdown. The realm of the Marquis Martianus is effectively a country in its own right. If it has subdivisions, the ranks of the subdivisions are Earl and Countess for the state and province level, Viscount and Viscountess for the county level, and Baron, Baroness at the city level, effectively doing the job of a mayor. Every position requires that one pass the character test to be considered qualified. All may hire whatever support staff they need to fulfill their duties. Marquises and Marchionesses are promoted to their positions after first being an Earl or Countess. Alternatively, if the realm is being colonized for the first time, the Marquis or Marchioness is appointed by the Duke or Duchess. Earls and Countesses are promoted to their positions after first being a Viscount or Viscountess. Alternatively, if the realm is being colonized for the first time, the Viscount or Viscountess is appointed by the Earl or Countess. Viscounts and Viscountesses are promoted to their positions after first being a Baron or Baroness. Alternatively, if the realm is being colonized for the first time, the Baron or Baroness is appointed by the Viscount or Viscountess. Marquises, Marchionesses, Earls, Countesses, Viscounts, Viscountesses, and Barons, Baronesses do not represent the people, even though they are in charge of their safety and standard of life. Their jobs are to implement the proposals and directives sent from the Office of Manifestation. To that end, their job is more of a guardian than a representative. The people have a say by going directly to the Office of Priorities and making a proposal, which is then processed and handed down to the implementer in their area. Thus, the people indirectly control the implementer and what they implement. The Office of Priorities shall have a way to gather proposals from each realm in the nation, right down to the Baron Baroness level if applicable. To assuage concerns that a distant office is going to direct what happens in a local area, the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data can be brought in to collect data about the local situation, and the Office of Identity can be brought in to service identity issues in the community, such as land patents. As well, the local community can implement a local version of the system if they so choose. This is a self-learning, self-correcting, autonomous direct democracy system, and as such, there are no representatives. There is no need for local councils, ridings, or electoral districts. There can be no gerrymandering, and there are absolutely no political parties. And even if they tried, such parties have no power in the system. There is not even a direct ruler most of the time. The Council of Witness cannot do anything without unanimous consent, and you can be guaranteed that the manner in which the Council works makes it impossible to violate human rights. The thinking processes built into this system ensure that everywhere in the nation and at every level has access to competent leadership of their own initiative. Thus, it is unlikely that anyone in any location can usurp the needs of the local people. This system provides leadership as a service for the people without the need for a ruler. When it comes to control of land, land patents are the responsibility of the local Baron Baroness, Viscount Viscountess, Earl Countess, or Marquis Marchioness. All proposals that affect land require the explicit consent of the owner and are opt-in. This helps maintain peace, avoid conflict, acquire consent, and ensure that only those proposals that are truly desired by the people are accepted by them. A ratified proposal for which a landowner has not consented does not affect them. Once a proposal is consented to, its consent transfers with the sale of the land. If the new owner later decides they don't like it, they may make a proposal to the Office of Priorities to stricken it. Term limits of 4 years are applied to the lowest rank available in a realm, whether that be Baron, Baroness, Viscount, Viscountess, Earl, Countess, or Marquis, Marchioness. When the term limit is up, an election is called. Everyone participating in the contest, including the incumbent, must take or retake and pass the character test to be eligible for election. When there are openings in the hierarchy, they may be filled by promotion. This will leave an opening at the lowest rank where an election can be called. The character test must be retaken every time there is a change of position. The promotional, electoral, and character-driven manner of this approach ensures the positions of power are filled with quality candidates at every level. The hierarchy of the office of manifestation is therefore described as follows: Emperor or Empress for the species, King or Queen for the races, Prince or Princess for the universal realms, Duke or Duchess for the planets, and Marquis or Marchioness for the planetary realms. This hierarchy is consistent with the scaling model of self-respect that we use. I would like to point out again that the people do not interact directly with this hierarchy. The people interact with the office of priorities, which then sets everything in motion via the system and the hierarchy. Should larger alliances be necessary, it is possible to expand the size of Council of Witness to encompass different species. There are no race, sex, or species restrictions on any other position in this system. If the entire system is used for only one race, then a council of races is redundant. In that case, council members can represent regions rather than races. If there is a military, its chain of command should mirror the hierarchy. This is because military action is also a form of manifestation. Therefore, the military operates under the advisement of the princes and princesses, the dukes and duchesses, and the marquises and marchionesses, depending on where the action takes place. Why would the military not operate directly under the kings and queens and even the emperor or empress? The answer is the military actually does, but indirectly. Proposals, including proposals for military action, run through the system, are refined, and eventually reach the council for ratification. The council ratifies them, sends them to the Office of Manifestation, and the Office of Manifestation relays the proposal as an order to the military. Neither the Office of Manifestation nor the military can take independent action unless there is a proposal or order that allows it. When setting up an office realm or issuing an order, it would typically allow for certain independent action, such as self-defense, feeding the people, certain zoning laws, and so forth. But attacking anybody else, unless in a state of war with that enemy, would not be authorized independently, and constructing certain infrastructure might require the council's approval. Depending on the level of military coordination required, princes, princesses, dukes, duchesses, and marquises, marchionesses will coordinate with their respective military liaisons to bring about the requested manifestation. I suggest that princes, princesses liaise with the highest military admirals in their realm, and dukes and duchesses and marquises and marchionesses liaise with fleet admirals, fleet captains, or captains. Certain military actions, such as launching weapons of mass destruction, would require explicit council approval. All such approval is by unanimous consent, 24 signatures or one if there is an emperor-empress invoking the ruler archetype. The military is subordinate to the Council of Witness via the Office of Manifestation. Like every other part in the system, they are policed by the Office of Identity. That office scans for infiltrations, betrayers, and coups by the military and puts them down before they become a problem. The police force of the Office of Identity must therefore be very well equipped to be able to take on a military if ever a need such arised. Preventing systemic takeovers is much, much easier than trying to wrest control back from a taken system. Directives are orders from the council to an office. They are different from proposals and inquiries. Each office requires directives in a specific format that is optimal to its operation. The reason for this is to be consistent with the property and goal of the system that it mirrors the operation of your internal mind. Between the part, office, and the witness, counsel, is a faculty that engages and directs the part. The faculty is represented as a directive in the system. Light is allegorical for information and knowledge. The identity of the nation must be firmly anchored in law, or it will deviate from its center, become off balance, and collapse. Laws are the rules by which this reality works. A directive of light is an instruction to make a change in the office of identity based on new knowledge about laws. With this new knowledge, the identity for the nation is refined. As changes made to the Office of Identity impact all other offices, the requirements on this directive are particularly tight. It must reference on which universal laws a change is being made, why the change is being made, demonstrate how the change is beneficial to the nation and also not harmful in the long run, account for the law of thought and the balancing factor of that thought if there is a thought. Directives of Light are this system's version of a constitutional or charter amendment. They are a big deal because they affect the very code upon which the nation is defined and make alterations to its founding documents. Therefore, Directives of Light require 25 signatures, the 24 of a unified council, and one more for the sitting emperor or empress. Because of the requirement for an emperor's or empress's signature, these directives are expected and desired to be rare and only occur during times of great change when an emperor or empress is sitting. It must be understood that directives of light shape reality for the people in the nation, which is a big responsibility. They must be done very carefully. I would also like to state explicitly that all proposals eventually make their way to Council, including proposals by the people. If Council decides that a directive of light is required to implement the proposal, that is how it will happen. Thus, it is possible for the people to bring forth a proposal that results in a directive of light. It might be that additional requirements are desired for a directive. If Council or the Emperor is not satisfied with only 25 signatures, they have the option of going for a full ratification, which is a vote to all of the eligible people in the nation. In this event, a majority vote of 90% or higher is required among all eligible voters. Eligibility is available only to those who have achieved the age of reason and discernment. This is the age when a human has developed its reasoning faculty sufficiently to take responsibility for itself, to manage its own political affairs, and see beyond the limits of its society. It could be at age 20, age 40, or even not at all. But these people form the responsible segment of the population, and it is only they who are qualified to vote on a directive of light. Directives of Time are messages from the Council of Witness to the Office of Rightness. The Directive of Time is an inquiry where the Council is asking a question to the Office of Rightness to determine the rightness or wrongness of something. They are trying to find out, will this cause harm? And they should be as precise as they possibly can with the question. When the Council asks this question, the Office of Rightness processes it as they normally would and returns an answer directly to Council. It does not go through the system like a proposal. It is called a directive of time because the Office of Rightness will take time to come up with an answer to the inquiry. Especially if the office does not already know the answer, it will run a simulation which applies the time function of the universe and which could take years to figure out the answer. As all offices are self-determining in this system and take care of their own staffing needs, the Council of Witness has no authority to affect staffing at any office, nor to request any changes of it, especially to its core function. External modifications to the core functioning of any office require a directive of light. A directive of imaging is a message from the Council of Witness to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. This is analogous to using your imagination to work out a problem. In this case, the message is a query. A query is a type of question that requests specific data. It wants data in a specific format that is easy to understand, like a report with well-done infographics. The Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data can surely create stock reports for common purposes. The Directive of Imaging is intended for more hypothetical situations. It is a what would happen if kind of query. It is a fantasy question. In this case, the office must prepare an answer to the question as best as it can. As the uncertainty is greater, their answer should include possibility analysis in their report so that the council can lead by managing possibilities. Responses to a directive of imaging should use the best presentation technology available. Reports, infographics, dashboards, videos, and presentations are one thing, but if the office can project its response on multiple large view screens, use holographic projections, even a holodeck or interactive virtual reality itself, all of that would help communicate a response to a directive of imaging to the best degree possible. Furthermore, responses have to consider follow-up questions and adapt immediately on the fly to those questions. That way, the council can work out a hypothetical situation to the best degree possible using the latest available data and possibility management techniques. A directive of darkness is a message from the Council of Witness to the Office of Priorities. It is a directive for a proposal. It represents the desire of the council to lead the nation in a certain direction. but because it is a desire, it lacks the balancing factor that is required for the directive to be fair. Hence, it goes to the Office of Priorities so that it may enter the system and be processed and balanced. All proposals from Council must go through the Office of Priorities as a Directive of Darkness before they can go to the Office of Manifestation. In other words, Council shall not send an unrefined directive to the Office of Manifestation directly. Once a Directive of Darkness is submitted, the Office of Priorities processes it like any other proposal. The Office of Priorities may elect to hold a debate or presentation or trial or any other manner it deems fit to determine the directive's appropriate standing, integrity, and priority amongst all the other proposals it has to deal with. The directive should be named Darkness. I know it sounds weird, but is part of the intent of this system to reflect your own inner working and the fact that you have a dark faculty that accesses the desire mind. This faculty may also be known as the shadow in some circles because it is all about the hidden part of desire and the other aspect of that mind that is used to balance an entire thought. Mastering this part of you individually can lead to much higher thinking abilities. If the society can master it as well, the society will get much higher thinking abilities and it will unlock the next level of democracy, freedom, and development for the civilization. A directive of motive is a message from the Council of Witness to the Office of Reason. This is analogous to you using your motive faculty to access your reasoning mind. The directive is again another inquiry, and it tries to answer the questions: how does it work? Why does it work? What is the ruling thought? What other thoughts are in play? What would this look like if it were balanced? What would this look like if it were in a certain orientation? It asks the Office of Reasoning to assist counsel with thinking through and working out a hard problem or proposal. What is the reasoning or motive behind the thing we're investigating? The Office of Reason gets the tough questions, and the Directive of Motive signals that the question is from counsel. I leave it to the office to determine whether or not it wants to prioritize the question. This office has very difficult thinking work to do, and it will take a long time to answer any particular question. When an answer is returned, it should contain with it a report of the relevant thoughts involved and a possibility analysis of where things currently stand and could go. This office should be working with advanced thinking techniques. A directive of I-Am is a message from the Council of Witness to the Office of Expression. It is analogous to the I-Am faculty in your mind, which is the use of your expression part to express your identity. It helps the nation express its identity because it is both a reflection and a statement that the nation exists. It is. I am. The message is a request from the Council of Witness to the Office of Expression. It can be used to set and select a different national personality, archetype, or to switch to a different stair step or breath mode. It can also be used to make certain changes that do not affect the primary functions of the Office of Expression, such as archetypes and modes, such as holidays or cultural events, festivals, and hints as to specific ways to go about expressing the nation's identity. This directive should keep the name I am so that all who look upon the system can realize that this is a part of themselves and works in a way that is related to their self expression part. When the Council sends the directive of I am, it is as if it is the nation saying all together, I am. The Emperor or Empress is able to make a directive of I am for when he or she wishes to invoke the ruler archetype. The Directive of Focus is a message from the Council of Witness or from the Emperor or Empress to the Office of Manifestation. It is an instruction that says, build this with this being properly defined. The special quality of the focus faculty is that it brings all other faculties to bear on the focus of attention. The focus faculty never acts alone. The proposal, as a directive of focus, contains within it the results of the work of all of the other offices by their directives. It contains data and impressions from the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data that helped refine the proposal to its present state and ensure all needs and wants are satisfied. It contains the needs and wants that were established by the Office of Priorities. It contains instructions on how to go about implementation by the Office of Reason. It has been vetted by the Office of Rightness as the right thing to do. The proposal is also in alignment with the nation's identity as established by the Office of Identity and will express itself along the guidelines established by the Office of Expression. The Office of Manifestation will use the light as knowledge. It will use time, it will use imagination and darkness, it will be motivated, and it will bring the I-Am of the nation into the real world as it focuses its efforts on the new project. In addition to all of the offices, directives, archetypes, positions, and council as described above, there are additional features this system supports in order to round out its effectiveness. I suppose we could say they are optional, but they are still very important. The Office of Realization is a historical analysis and future trends office, and it serves a very important function. It tries to answer the question, are we repeating history? History repeats is a phenomenon that occurs when we do not learn the lessons of our thinking. For a society, this can be devastating because it means the society cannot advance further and its people cannot develop themselves further until this lesson has been learned. In a lot of cases, the failure to learn these lessons can result in the parasitism and destruction of that society. The Office of Realization intercepts proposals from the Office of Priorities on their way to the Office of Reason. It processes them and returns them to the Office of Reason. The Office of Realization does not stop any proposal, but it has the ability to stamp it with a warning, history repeating, and a report of how it sees the proposal repeating history. Whether repeating history is the right or wrong thing to do is the determination of the Office of Rightness. To answer whether a proposal is repeating history, this office must have a good understanding of history. It must know the nation's history and it must learn the history of other nations so as to learn lessons from them. Avoiding the repeats of history can be extremely important. Consider that Earth is a planet that suffers repeated cataclysms. You will not be able to escape those cataclysms until you learn the lessons of history and work towards escaping them as a society. That might just be the ultimate mission of this office. The office must also be very good at forecasting trends. Its primary function is, of course, to identify that a situation that has happened before is happening again and establish a possibility analysis of the likely outcomes. Whether or not the likely outcomes are ideal is irrelevant to the function of the office. It should attach its warning and report it in either case so that the information is available to the decision making offices. This system can be trusted to make the right decision. Making right decisions is one of the core competencies of this system. It is what allows the nation to navigate reality through time and not fall off a cliff into oblivion. It is what allows the nation to uplift its people and show them how it is done. The Office of Conscience might seem redundant, but it does serve a useful function as a backup office, and it tries to answer an important question. Is this conscionable? It is possible for the Office of Rightness to get a proposal wrong, particularly if it lacks knowledge and is inexperienced. The Office of Conscience can help catch mistakes. In answering whether something is conscionable, the office can seek out public sentiment. The Office of Conscience intercepts proposals from the Office of Rightness on their way to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. It processes them and returns them to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. If it finds something unconscionable, it attaches a warning to the proposal and its report on why the proposal is unconscionable. If there is no finding, nothing is done and the proposal is unaltered. As a result of unconscionable finding, the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data will add unconscionable to its data. The Office of Priorities will reprioritize, and the Office of Rightness will mark the proposal as wrong the next time it comes around. Proposals marked unconscionable must go around the system one more time so that they pass the Office of Rightness again. To determine whether something is unconscionable, the Office of Conscience can access feeling data from the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. It can also pull the populace directly to determine public sentiment on the proposal. It may also seek advice from people who are exceptionally of good character, even though the office should be populated by people of good character anyway. The office can consult law books and other sources of what makes something conscionable. The reason why we want to test for conscionability is because we don't want the nation to get itself into a position where it is doing something unconscionable, either directly or by association. Such positions can turn the people against the nation or even cause the nation to lose allies. Unconscionability leads to degeneration if it is not caught, and we don't want to go down that path because we know degeneration leads to tyranny. The office of conscience prevents the nation from going down the path of tyranny. As this system models the self, and in particular a triune self according to Percival, there is another component we ought to add that is easy to forget to make sure it is not forgotten. That is the Aya. According to Percival, the Aya is a unit of consciousness that has graduated from nature and now exists as an intelligence. The highest possible unit in nature is a breath form, also known as a soul, so the Aya is a soul that has freed itself from nature. This system of democracy also has an intelligent and nature dividing line. Everything in the system is on the intelligent side except the office of manifestation, which is on the nature side. Generally, the system operates in a top-down fashion where a manifestation is concerned. What if we added feedback to the system? In the reverse direction, from the office of manifestation to the council of witness, we can add feedback from nature as a response to the proposal being implemented. The office of the Aya is responsible for receiving feedback from the office of manifestation. It processes the feedback and reports it to the council of witness. The office may work with other offices as it needs to in order to do its processing. The office of the Aya collects feedback relating to how proposals were implemented. That feedback can include the ease of implementation and any cost overruns, any kind of unexpected developments, including and especially if the laws of physics don't match expectation, any complaints or compliments from the people about the implementation, and the same from any foreign dignitaries. Whatever the feedback may be, it will be delivered from various positions in the Office of Manifestation. There is more to this office than mere feedback collection. It must be able to parse and understand the feedback and convert it into something meaningful. If there are cost overruns, for example, then it will have to understand why. Could it be the cause of poor planning? Could there be unexpected costs? Could there be grifting, theft, or even fund diversion going on? Maybe there is a mafia or corruption somewhere. The office may audit as it sees fit. In this sense, the Office of the Aya functions as a kind of autonomous adjunct council to ensure that people are not being stolen from. It can deliver its findings to council and report corruption to the Office of Identity for cleansing. If there are unexpected developments, the office has to try to find out what was it that was unexpected and how so. This is an adept system of knowledge, and for something to be unknown means there exists the possibility of a mistake. The office needs to investigate to ensure any possibilities where mistakes can occur are closed. Mistakes are errors in the system that can be exploited. Mistakes can be exploited to parasite and feed off a civilizational system, cause it to fail, and ultimately lead to a tyranny. Mistakes must be corrected. They are the same things as bugs in a system and prevent the system from operating at its fullest potential. Where the unexpected development is the laws of physics not operating as expected, then the Office of Aya shall conduct an investigation to discover how the operation of those physical laws actually work so that the gap in knowledge can be closed. These discoveries should be stored in the knowledge banks of the system and communicated to the people so they may correct their knowledge and learn from it. In this sense, the Office of the Aya is a research office. Where all other offices on the intelligence side of this system try their very best to make error-free proposals before they are given to the Office of Manifestation, the Office of the Aya corrects any errors that are detected after this manifestation has occurred. It completes a full-circuit error-correcting mechanism in this system. Presented here is the full diagram of the system we just designed. It is a triune democracy because it is modeled after a triune self, you. A triune democracy is a type of autonomous direct democracy with self-learning and self-correcting features. It has the systemic ability to think and learn from its mistakes at scale, just as you do atomically, as above, so below, or in this case, as below, so above, an application of the law of scaling. It is balanced by race and sex in the council of witness so that balance along those lines can be achieved and any trespass avoided. It is direct because you literally must bring the change you want to see via the office of priorities. From there, everything is autonomous as each office fulfills its function. A triune democracy is a self-governing system of governance for a self-governing people. It recognizes and facilitates self-sovereign life for its people, and I'll explain how later. This is the most advanced form of democracy ever conceived, yet it is still a people-driven system. You do not need computers to run it, although they most certainly will help. You do need to protect it with a test that measures strength of character, or corruption will be able to set in. This diagram shows the minimum required to operate this system. This would be more appropriate for a typical country on Earth. In the minimum model, the optional offices of realization, conscience, and the Aya are removed. The office of the Duke is removed as well because it is redundant. Most of the realm offices are also removed on the assumption that the country is a landlocked nation on the surface. Therefore, the office of manifestation operates via one prince and a marquis, and any optional subordinates. Each of the offices can be run by only one human being. What matters is the function of the office, not how big it is or how it works. So long as it is able to perform its function, any configuration of the office is acceptable. Thus, the minimum number of people to operate this system is 9 people, 1 for each office, plus 24 for council, and 1 more for the emperor. The system can run with a minimum of 34 people. The size of the council can vary depending on needs. For a very small nation with few races and regions, I might suggest reducing council size to 12 people or 6 pairs of kings and queens. Even a 6-person council with 3 pairs of kings and queens might work, but I would not go any smaller. Thus, you would only need 22 and 16 people, respectively, to operate systems with these smaller council sizes. Be warned that the smaller the system, the harder the work. The main offices of feeling, sensing, perception, and data, of priorities, of reason, and of rightness all require substantial amounts of highly technical work. Whoever runs these offices will need to be very skilled at what they do to fulfill the function correctly. If you wanted to try the model in the smallest possible scenario at the level of a small town, this diagram shows you the absolute smallest the system can go. In this model, council is removed and is effectively only a baron, which is the equivalent of a mayor. Additional council members can be added as needed or desired, but it is envisioned that the people servicing the offices are also sitting on council. The offices are staffed by only one person. The offices of identity and expression for the town can probably be dispatched if the budget is really tight. This means the absolute smallest number of people required to run the system are 6 people. The depiction here shows an 8-person town running the system. Note that while the system runs standalone, the Baron has the powers of an emperor within the system as far as it is concerned. I do not require that local small towns follow the same model as the national system of governance, but I will also not stand in the way of people who want to do that. I think either configuration can work effectively. I have shown you the different parts of the system, and you should have a good idea of how it works at a micro level. Now, I'd like to go over how the system works overall at a macro level. First and foremost, the system is protected by a test of character. No one may hold any position in this system, whether as an authority, police officer, or as an employee or servant, if they fail to achieve high scores on the character test. No exceptions. Without this rule in place, the system would be susceptible to corruption among its own people or infiltration by a foreign operation. Even without this rule, the system has capabilities built in to stop negative influence, but this rule seals the deal. The character test rule guarantees that the people running the system are worthy of their positions and are working properly. The aim of the system is to uplift the people it serves. That means repairing the perpetual psychological and mental health problems that they have. It means teaching them that what they are and how they work. It means instilling in them a greater sense of responsibility so that they may take more control of their lives and have more freedom. And it means taking things to another level so that we can all enjoy the benefits of a healthy civilization without repeating the mistakes of old. The system does all of this by modeling itself after your own internal operation. You are a triune self, a 3-part being consisting of a psychic part, a mental part, and a noetic part. Only the psychic part is actually incarnate in your body. In the system, each of these major parts is subdivided into a pair of offices: identity and expression for the noetic part, rightness and reason for the mental part, and feeling, sensing, perception, data, and priorities for the psychic part. The body is a creature of nature on its own journey, and you form a partnership with it for its own care and upliftment. This entire aspect is modeled in the system from each of the parts of your being and their operation to the custodial interaction with nature. The seat of consciousness is represented by the Council of Witness itself. Everyone who witnesses the operation of the system and thinks about it should hopefully begin to see the same operation in their own being. This will give them a eureka moment that will help them further on their journey of self discovery. It helps them discover their soul and it helps them to uplift themselves. The work of upliftment cannot be done by the system itself. All it can do is point the way. Modeling it after the self as a national self is how it accomplishes this. To build the system first requires someone to take the role of emperor. They should already possess the strength of character qualities necessary to run a nation and, of course, knowledge of international law. The emperor's first task is to create a character test by which he or she can qualify the people running the system. The emperor's second task is to build and staff the Office of Identity. The Office of Identity has the ability to construct and reconstruct all other offices in the system. This ability can be leveraged to build the system. The emperor then has to define each of the offices for the Office of Identity. This is where the nation's constitution or charter come in. The emperor will relay each definition to the Office of Identity via a Directive of Light. The offices should be constructed in the following order: Office of Expression, Office of Reason, Office of Rightness, Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data, Office of Priorities, Council of Witness, Office of Manifestation, Offices of the Princes, Offices of the Dukes, Offices of the Marquises, Office of Realization, Office of Conscience, Office of the Aya. Once the emperor has defined every office for the Office of Identity, he or she should then begin filling the Council of Witness. Once council is operational, the emperor can take a step back and observe the system, making tweaks here and there where necessary. Operational control passes to council, and the emperor is only needed to fix bugs or plan other long-term objectives. The system should run autonomously from this point forward. One other thing the emperor might want to do is define the nation's identity for the Office of Identity. That would be abstract things like the flag, as in construct meanings behind the flag rather than the flag itself, which is an expression task, some cultural things, and any other identity data that the emperor sees fit. When the system is operational, the emperor can build out the character test trials. He or she should make sure everything is available and ready to be the next emperor so that succession may be possible. There is no bloodline lineage in this system, which means there is no such thing as a royal family, nor are there any hereditary aspects to succession. Occupancy and qualification for positions are by strength of character. That strength of character can be found in anyone of any race or sex at any age and from any background. The system recognizes that it is possible for the son or daughter of a great human being to be an idiot and does not make the mistake of handing them power. The emperor position is open to anyone who is capable of taking it. It is guarded by the hardest form of the character test, and it will kill all who get it wrong. It is not and shall never be an elected position. It should be vacant most of the time. It is intended that somebody take the emperor position when a time of great change arrives. That somebody should be strong, knowledgeable, loyal, and wise enough to guide his or her people through the change. After the change, they should lay off the reins. If it comes to pass that the character test and its trials become tourist attractions, and therefore an abattoir for humans, then somebody should become the emperor and make the test and trials harder. Remember that the desire for power is an ultimate desire in its own right, and there will always be people looking to game the system and seize power over it by any means necessary. A triune democracy is a form of direct democracy. That means it is not a representative democracy, which is the kind of democracy that most people are familiar with. There are no representatives to send to Parliament. There is no Parliament. There is also no House of Commons, no Senate, and no judicial branch. Compared to a representative democracy, a triune democracy saves on costs associated with representatives and can therefore run leaner and cleaner. However, I would recommend reinvesting those freed up costs into the offices so that they can perform at an adequate level. A triune democracy is an autonomous direct democracy. It has automation features built into its system design so that you don't have to waste your time voting on every single little proposal, especially if they don't matter to you. You can be guaranteed that whatever proposal makes it to the Office of Manifestation is reasonable, right, conscionable, balanced, and will not cause harm in any way. If you do happen to object to it after the fact, you can always bring your own counter proposal. In a triune democracy, you must bring the change you want to see. That is where it gets its directness and what makes it a direct democracy. Not everybody can bring a change, however. Only those who have qualified themselves to a certain degree by taking and passing the character test may issue a proposal. This is to prevent abuse of the system and obviously errant and ill considered proposals. Making proposals is an intellectually demanding task, and the system needs to make sure they are worth the effort. Remember that most of humanity is in a damaged state, and people need to work on themselves to a suitable degree before they are qualified to tell others what to do. As well, proposals are the most accessible attack vector, so the system needs to ensure their protection. Be that as it may, the threshold for passing the character test at the proposal level is on the lower setting compared to offices in the system. The sad truth is that most people are insane, unthinking, and violent individuals. The elites of the world know this, and on this matter I agree with them. I do not agree with their methods, however, where they attempt a control tactic. You must understand that everyone is at different stages of growth. From the poorest to the richest, all need challenges that are appropriate to their station in life and the support and backing of their nation to meet those challenges head on. Peace in the world is a desired outcome, but the manner it will be attempted is fallacious. The planetary tyranny unfolding, a world with heavy regulation to force peace upon the people, is a war in and of itself and will not end the way the elites think it will. While democracies usually encourage the support of everyone, a triune democracy requires that the people get control of themselves so that they are sane, can think, and have learned of their own accord not to engage in violence. The character test guarding proposals checks this at the door and encourages the people to follow a self guided path of improvement if they want their proposals heard. Such a path also teaches them how to manage freedom and responsibility, as self governance is the path to true freedom. This reasoning must be communicated to the people so that they do not erroneously interpret it as elitist. A triune democracy must allow its people to free themselves from insanity and ignorance with encouragement and reward along the way. People bring their proposals to the Office of Priorities. The Office of Priorities prioritizes them and, depending on the proposal, may request debates, presentations, or even trials to prove the worth and merit of the proposal. Proposals are passed to the offices of Reason, Rightness, and Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data before returning back to the Office of Priorities. They may also go through the offices of Realization and Conscience on this journey. Proposals make their way through a defined loop in the system. This loop is a unique feature of a triune democracy. It makes the whole system a proposal processing engine. This is greatly different from other systems, which are more linear in their processing. Other democratic systems try to solve and coordinate all the different desires among their people through the use of debates in Parliament. Parliament has its origins in parley, which is a meeting between adversaries, which is what people on both sides of a debate could be considered. They try to prioritize desires based on compromise and majority. Each of those desires is a possibility that could be experienced, and a nation that can maximize possibilities is a nation that can be innovative. The more possibilities and innovation that are present in a nation, which is democracy's strengths, the more places there are for everybody in the nation, which means fewer people are left behind. The processing engine of a triune democracy allows every desire through without the need for compromise, negotiation, or majorities, although these things can still happen. The processing engine relies on the reasonableness and rightness of the proposal and tries to effect a balancing of the proposal before it is emitted into everyday life. It might be that the Office of Rightness simulates the proposal, and the one who issued the proposal participates in the simulation, gets his or her desire met, and then decides the proposal isn't needed anymore. That is fair game and is a completely supported outcome. Proposals can be abandoned. Conflict among people results because needs are not met. Needs are requirements that must be met for there to be peace. We all need to eat. We all need to procreate. We all need shelter. A gardener has to balance the needs of all the different plants under his or her care in order to get a healthy crop. A competent democracy has to do the same job with people so that it may thrive. That is why when a proposal has completed processing in the engine, it is forwarded to the Council of Witness. Council gets a balanced proposal to review that is guaranteed to be reasonable and right against all possibilities. Here, they have the opportunity to check and verify that it meets the needs of their people. If it does, they can approve it and send it to the Office of Manifestation for implementation. If it does not, they can suggest an improvement and send it back into the system. All proposals must do at least one circuit in the loop, but I expect the average proposal to go through it several times. Just as how, when we think, we'll mull an idea over in our head in various iterations before finally making a decision about it, that is the same thing going on here. At some point, the Office of Priorities is going to recognize that the proposal is good enough to submit to Council, and that is the point of decision. Of course, coordination with the proposal issuer, who may acknowledge that yes, the proposal is good enough to submit to Council, may also occur. Proposals must be thorough and well researched, but only focused on a single issue. They must be atomic, which means they must not be giant omnibus proposals that contain fixes or improvements to a bunch of different things. Where proposals modify code, the modification should be accompanied by an explanation of the modification and the reasons for it. Good coding practices ought to be followed as well. The nation should use issue tracking software to manage proposals and version control software for its code. The Council of Witness is composed of 12 kings and queens from 12 races to give balance by race and sex to the system. Its primary task is to consider the implications of each proposal on their respective races and sexes, and either approve the proposal or send it back for further refinement, in which case it should suggest desired changes and the reasons for those changes. Council does not lead as much as it witnesses. The people lead. They lead through the creation of their proposals, which the system processes and Council approves. The people on the ground are closest to the needs of the nation and are therefore in the best position to see what is missing, what is needed, what is being done, and what is being done wrong, and what can be improved. The onus is on the people to recognize the shortcoming, research it, and propose a solution, a suitable solution to the problem. A triune democracy is a democracy, after all, and the people lead in a democracy. That is not to say that Council is unable to lead. It most certainly can. Everyone in the system can make proposals. Council will typically lead by making proposals of their own. In matters of state, such as foreign relations and war, Council has a special duty to coordinate the nation's posture with other nations. These duties will be explained a bit later, as we have not yet covered how the system handles diplomacy. Council works by unanimous consent. Any one member can block a proposal if they feel the needs of their people are not met by it. If they do so, it is on them to attach a reason to the proposal for blocking it and to optionally suggest an improvement. Although a suggestion is optional, I highly recommend attaching a suggested improvement, even if it means going to your specific race and asking for their input. It is possible they may not know, which is why it is optional, but finding the missing needs of the people will help the proposal succeed in its successive rounds. The improvement suggestion is optional, but the reasoning is mandatory. It may be that the council member does not know the reason and it is blocked on a gut feeling. That is okay. The council member must now endeavor to research their gut feeling and come to a final answer as to why it is blocked. This may involve a lot of research on the council member's part, but that is what must be done. He or she has the aid of the offices to assist with this via directives. The fear or loathing of doing research should not stop a council member from blocking a proposal they disagree with. If this is the case, the council member is not qualified for their position and should resign. A new council member will be found. That said, it is not like a council member is on council by themselves. They may have an office of their own behind them to liaise with their race. They can coordinate and seek advice from other council members, and as already mentioned, they have the full research potential of the system behind them. It is true that unanimous consent will slow things down. That is the point. No proposal may cause harm to any particular race or sex in the nation, and so this mechanism ensures there is balance. Leadership without harm is a skill that must be developed for this kind of leadership. As well, the system operates in a steady state with the understanding that whatever changes are made are typically permanent. Therefore, it will take all the time it needs to make sure that change is the right change. Do not let time be a barrier to good policy. When the situation calls for it, the system can switch to a very efficient mode of operation via the emperor invoking the ruler archetype, though the risk of errors and harm is higher. Any member of council can become the emperor if he or she passes the character trials. The balance by race and sex in council is only one way to balance the council. If this system is implemented in a nation with a singular race, then the balance can be achieved via region and sex. Balance by sex is a requirement as both masculine and feminine energies are plentiful in any nation and their needs must be considered. Whatever composition of council, it must be balanced for the system to operate at its desired performance. The Council of Witness provides the only place where representation occurs in the system. Now, representative democracies do not work how they are typically understood. What is commonly understood is that you send a representative for your region to represent your region's interests. What actually happens is that you all agree that your representative gets to make the decisions, and whatever they decide is what they decide. If they are an idiot, a thief, or a traitor, you are out of luck and have no recourse. And those systems do not have any way of ensuring the representative is qualified. Elections do not guarantee qualifications. This approach further led to the party phenomena, which is nothing more than the expression of a thought of politics among the people. A triune democracy solves all of these problems. The way a council member represents their race or sex is however that race or sex wants. They work out amongst themselves who their best, most suitable male and female candidates will be, whether that be by elections, combat, cunning, negotiations, trials, puzzles, games, or any other method. Then they send their best to council. It is expected that council members have a support structure in place from their race and sex, whether that be by institutional offices or mere social networks. They will need to be able to communicate with their people in some capacity. It is true that as representatives, they are still making the decisions on behalf of their race and sex. They are qualified by the character test, by their specific race and sex tests for merit, and they are checked by the very council and system of democracy they take part in. There is no party phenomenon. A triune democracy works with the law of thought, and the party phenomenon is recognized as just the law of thought in operation for a particular thought. The system does not allow any thought to rule it. Council members must be knowledgeable about this law as well so that they can do their jobs properly. The Office of Manifestation implements the proposals that pass through the Triune Democratic system. It coordinates the construction and maintenance of infrastructure, provides programming and services, relays objectives to militaries, and relays feedback from the local communities to council. This office manages all of nature for the intelligent society. The Office of Manifestation is organized into realms by type of matter and headed by a prince or princess. That prince is the one who actually rules and controls the realm. However, the duty is not so much ruling the realm as it is facilitating manifestation in the realm. As mentioned, these are highly technical leadership positions that require a great understanding of how nature works in their realm. The job involves finding and coordinating use of the best available technologies and techniques for working with the realm. This has implications for architecture, agriculture, and any other food production method, transportation, militaries, and any other such domain. The job does not have any concern with the social or cultural well being of the people in the realm. That concern is handled elsewhere in the system, but can certainly coordinate the desired expression of the society in the technologies and techniques in the realm, and it can relay concerns to council if needed. Unlike social and cultural concerns, the safety of the people in the realm is included in the responsibilities of the prince and princess. To this end, he or she can propose regulations suitable to the realm and liaise with his or her counterpart in the military. The prince or princess can autonomously ask the military for defensive resources if there is a threat to the people in the realm. They may not request aggressive action nor wage war. Aggressive actions and war require the approval of council and/or the emperor/empress with the ruler archetype. The Office of Manifestation reaches down into the local communities of the nation. That makes this a centralized system on first impressions. To counter this aspect and make the system even more democratic and decentralized, you can use the local system model at the local level in combination with the model in use for the full system. This works especially well when each office at the local level has access to the same database and technologies that the full offices have. For example, staff at the local Office of Rightness, even if it is just one guy, can coordinate and share resources with the head Office of Rightness in real time to address the local community's needs. This capability creates significant performance opportunities for the local community and its council. Local communities can decide how they want to populate their local system. It might be that they choose local elections among qualified people, and that is okay. The people staffing the head office are not elected, as those are highly technical positions. They must be hired, trained, and retained. The local system communicates and coordinates with their local supervisor, whether that be a marquis, duke, or prince. The supervisors may also run their own local system model if it is appropriate to do so. The prince can and should often communicate with and coordinate with the Council of Witness. There is a risk in this system of it looking like the hierarchy from the later seasons of Star Trek Voyager. In that system, everyone in the hierarchy had to send their proposals to it, and presumably its central government, before they could act. Care should be taken so that this phenomenon does not creep into a triune democracy, and this is one of the reasons I suggested local system models. Local system models take care of the local needs of the various communities in the nation. They replace the existing democratically elected councils in these communities and serve the same purpose. That purpose, I will remind you, is the proper operation of the community, which involves navigating it in reality through time. With that in mind, the local model grants the community the ability to guarantee right, reasonable, balanced, and conscionable decisions and can thwart corruption at the local level. Members of the local community may be elected into these positions if that is what they wish, but they must be qualified to hold them according to the character test. If the local community has no one who is qualified to participate in a local model, it will have no model and it will be ruled by the next office higher up. If a local community in a triune democratic nation ignores this ruling and continues on with its normal council under a mayor, the nation may let it be for a while, but eventually it will grow to the point of requiring a triune system, and the nation is authorized to install one by any means necessary, ideally by upgrading people to their respective positions, but forceful action is permissible in this case. In a triune democracy, all subforms of government, when they are present, must also be triune democracies. There are multiple reasons for this requirement. The most obvious is the most beneficial, which is the coordination of the offices with their national counterparts to gain performance capabilities. It brings the model of a triune self into the local community so that people can learn about themselves and be inspired by it. It prevents corruption at the local level, which is why force is authorized in the case above. Corrupted local politicians and their servants are a huge problem, and a nation cannot function if its local councils are compromised. Higher positions in the office of manifestation are filled from the lower positions, and if the lower ones are corrupt, then a corrupt individual can make their way through the system. You do not want to have a corrupt prince ruling the military or failing to do their due diligence in construction standards. Corruption must be stopped at the source in the local community. Triune democracies do not trust the people entering the system until they have proven themselves trustworthy. People are not automatically born with strong or good characters, nor with conscious knowledge of self respect, morality, and honor. They are developed as a result of life experiences at an early age and refined as they grow up. Even the purest soul can fall to damnation if his or her upbringing was abusive. The people interact with the local system in the same way they normally would. They can either talk to their local council of witness directly or make a proposal and submit it to the local office of priorities. The local office has its own prioritization system and can scope the proposal to the local community. If the proposal is particularly good and apt, it can bounce the proposal up to higher levels and ultimately make it a national proposal. All proposals are scoped. They can be local, regional, or national, or even by realm. Scoping allows different rules to exist in different places. Where there are commonalities, it is helpful to scope the proposals at higher levels. The dukes and marquises, where there is no duke, coordinate with the princes in this system. As mentioned, princes facilitate rather than rule. Dukes and marquises rule in their areas, but only insofar as the system allows, and the people can always submit their own rule via proposals, which is the same structure dukes and marquises and everyone else use. The people under the dukes and marquises follow the rule of the duke or marquis, but with the best practice advice of the prince. A triune democracy is a system geared towards maximum freedom. Freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. The system maximizes, requires, and demands responsibility from the people so that they may enjoy a maximal amount of freedom. Yes, that means freedom is work and a lot of it, especially when it comes to preparing for the character test. It is less work if the knowledge is instilled in children as part of their upbringing. Laziness, sloth, and ignorance do not make a free population. They do not even make a responsible population. Be that as it may, people are allowed to be however they want in a triune democracy. Some people just want to live a simple life and raise a family. That is okay. Some people are just trying to survive, and some people want to take on the world. The system supports all of that. Triune democracies embrace self determination of individuals and peoples. The racial balancing of the Council of Witness should be evidence enough of that. The emphasis on responsibility and eventually self sovereignty helps on the individual side. True democracies can only work when the people govern themselves. That is an ultimate product of this system, and it will support those people the very best way it can. It is true that this creates a class divide, those who can pass the character test versus those who cannot, those who are responsible versus those who are not. However, no disrespect is tolerated against anyone in any position. Everybody is at different stages of growth, and those who are childlike will eventually grow out of it. The osmosis effect of consciousness applies, especially if the ignorant are few in number, for this helps set a habit in society which will really help things move along. This system actually gets stronger the more responsible people are and the better able they are to think. That in turn leads to a stronger, more capable society. Offices within Triune democracies can self determine. There are only a few requirements and conditions. Offices must fulfill their function. Offices must serve the government. Offices must not outsource their work, and offices are subject to being rebuilt by the Office of Identity in the event of corruption. Offices can hire whoever they need among the nation. They can expand and contract their size as they need. They can use whatever technology they need to fulfill their function so long as it does not send data outside the borders. Offices can charge for their services and sell their services to other people and businesses. They can relocate the office however they want. It is possible for there to be multiple instances of the same office serving the government. Imagine two offices of rightness. In that case, the government can divide work amongst the offices, effectively creating a parallel processing capability for proposals. If there are multiple instances of the same office, those offices may even compete with each other, although I'm not sure I would not recommend that. There may only be one office of identity and one office of expression, however. Each office can determine however it wants to be. So long as it fulfills its function, it is free to pursue the best way it thinks to do it. Offices are free to create whatever sub offices they need. I can see the Office of Rightness needing to create an Office of Simulations. I can see the Office of Feeling, Sensing, and Perception Data possibly creating sub offices for each type of sensory input. I can see the Office of Realization creating sub offices for its sub functions, historical and future trends. I can even see the Office of Priorities creating sub offices for the different types of prioritization tasks, debates, presentations, trials, and so forth. Whatever they need to do to fulfill their function, they are free to do so, so long as they don't corrupt themselves and betray their nation in the process. I strongly suggest that the offices are open to the public and not keep secrets from the public. I will, however, leave that to whoever implements this system to decide. The head of an office is a chief executive officer. It is run like a business or a corporation. The CEO really gets to decide that. The CEO can be hired and fired by the Council of Witness. The council cannot hire or fire any of the staff. As networked offices are able to support local communities, the communities have the ability to determine their development with the support of what is effectively the collective knowledge of their nation. The national office uplifts the local office, but it does not in any way interfere with its development. The national government uplifts the local government, but again, there is no interference where the development of a community is concerned. Non interference is a practice that will be developed as a Triune Democratic nation matures because it learns that interference ultimately causes harm to the people being interfered. Further, we want to maximize differences because differences allow for possibility exploration, which in turn generates innovation, which in turn generates new technology, capability, and exploration avenues for the nation. So there's a benefit to the nation for this approach as well. Before we discuss self determination of the people, we need to talk about self sovereignty. A lot of people want self sovereignty. What they actually want is the autonomy and ownership over self. They want self governance. When people create a nation, they first band together for mutual assistance and defense. Then they create a sovereignty to manage the business of mutual assistance and defense. The sovereignty becomes the government of the nation. The people who created it are the sovereigns in international law. For someone to say they are self sovereign is a misnomer because that is not how sovereignty works. Sovereignty only applies to those who run and manage the business of the nation. That can be a single person in the case of a monarchy, a group of people, or an aristocracy, or many people in the case of a true democracy. A triune democracy allows people to manage the business of the nation by making proposals. In this sense, they can claim to be among the sovereigns, but only after they have qualified themselves. This capability has never before been present in any democratic nation. People seeking self sovereignty want self-governance because that is how true democracy and freedom work. A society in which the majority of people are so developed would be a literal heaven on earth compared to what passes for society today. Autonomy and ownership over self are functions of self-respect. The people want to know themselves, to respect themselves, so that they can experience what it's like to be a properly functioning member of society. More to the point, they want to be among people who are like that too, and who will treat them with the respect they deserve. Don't we all want that? A triune democracy uplifts the people to be autonomous, self owning, self governing heroes they know they are. It challenges them, it trains them, and it supports them as they take their first real steps at true freedom. This is how we build a world with actively good people. Self determination is the ability to freely determine one's own political affairs. It is typically the act of building a nation. In a triune democracy, we want to facilitate the goals of self sovereignty within the existing international law framework. An important point to note is that in international law, the entire nation is seen as one person, which means that any one person conducting international business and establishing their own political affairs is doing so on behalf of themselves and their entire nation. That creates a requirement for the interests of the nation and the interests of the self sovereign individual to be in alignment, which makes it a partnership. A triune democracy can afford to partner with individuals who are qualified for self sovereignty and desire to experience it. Do not take these lightly, as such a partnership can get the nation into a lot of trouble. The nation can form a treaty with such an individual and recognize their authority over self and autonomy. This will free the individual from any of the nation's laws while still providing life support functions. The nation should also provide proposal processing as a service to such individuals so they don't make critical mistakes. The nation will need something in return, especially if it is expected to rescue or defend that individual militarily, and the proper individual will be wise enough not to ever be in such a situation. What that form of payment will be, I cannot possibly even guess, but I would suggest that it is substantial, worthy, and something that this particular individual is uniquely capable of achieving. That could mean brokering a treaty with a new nation, helping settle a deal for territory, mediating some conflict, or any kind of significant business arrangement. Individuals who are able to self govern and who actually pursue the self sovereign track are highly valuable and highly capable people. The relation the nation has with these people should not, under any circumstances, be jeopardized. The nation is not dealing with a child here, it is dealing with a properly functioning adult, possibly with significant spiritual capabilities. It should treat such individuals as any head of state and as internationally protected persons according to treaties. For the most part, the people lead in a triune democracy, and this kind of leadership will mostly be focused on domestic development issues and is managed by the system. This frees council to focus on the long term direction of the nation as well as matters of state. Council has a planning function with respect to how they want to lead. In the past, democracies with election cycles of 4 to 5 years meant that their political systems only made it possible to focus on short term objectives. Those nations had no long term planning, and because of the systemic short sightedness, those nations failed and collapsed. Long term planning is extremely important for the development of the nation, and this is something that Council and its adjunct offices do. To this end, Council primarily focuses its efforts on managing the nation's wealth, international relations, military, research, and development. Each of these functions have their own adjunct offices that report directly to Council. The Office of Wealth is an adjunct office that reports directly to Council. This office is responsible for managing the nation's treasury, wealth acquisition and maintenance, and other such revenue, profit, and asset collecting initiatives. This office plans and creates budgets that are appropriate for each archetype and mode combination. It works with Council and the Office of Expression to hone these plans. All budgets have a minimum requirement of funding the entire system. Every office, including the council, is paid first. Then funds go to the Office of Manifestation for spending according to the budget as set by the Office of Wealth. If the nation is starting up and there are no funds to pay the offices nor council, then this requirement can be waived in favor of manifestation. The Office of Wealth is not a spending office and has no authority to spend treasury wealth. It can only create budgets that get handed to the Office of Manifestation and pay the other offices and councils for their services. The Office of Manifestation may draw from the budget funds for its spending. All actions of the Office of Wealth, from planning budgets to acquiring wealth, have two phases to them: a planning phase and an approval phase. During the planning phase, Council and the Office of Wealth can work together to come up with a suitable proposal for the budget or wealth plan. During the approval phase, The proposed budget or wealth plan is submitted to the Office of Priorities and processed as normal. Once it returns to Council, Council can hand the balanced version back to the Office of Wealth for implementation or revise and propose again. Remember that mismanaged wealth will lead to excessive immigration as a crutch for a dearth of population. Be smart with the wealth and do not allow your nation to betray itself. Remember also that depending on the nature of the proposed budget or wealth plan, the Office of Priorities may of its own volition elect to hold debates, presentations, trials, or referendum votes with the public as is its mandate. The Office of Foreign Relations is an adjunct office that reports directly to Council. This office is responsible for managing the nation's relations with other nations. It works with treaties, diplomatic negotiations and arrangements, matters of protocol, ambassadors, and every other thing related to communication with other nations. It maintains contact lists with every nation it can, and it is aware of the politics, both planetary and alien. The Office of Foreign Relations has a team of ambassadors that can visit embassies in nations for which there is an embassy treaty. The office works with its foreign ambassador counterparts as well as council to establish an embassy in the nation's territory for the foreign ambassador. Ambassadors, both local and foreign, have free rein to talk to council whenever they want. Treaties and any kind of agreement are treated with very special care and scrutiny. The nation should be very hesitant to sign any agreement or treaty and should only do so if it is absolutely necessary. Agreements or treaties are an act of programming reality and hold more power than a constitution. They are effectively a directive of light with a foreign power, which makes them very dangerous, especially given the history of agreement abuse that goes on this planet. No treaty or agreement can be signed without first being submitted to the Office of Priorities. The Office of Priorities takes note of this particular proposal and sends it through the system. When it returns to the Office of Priorities, if it be deemed right by the Office of Rightness and reasonable by the Office of Reason and conscionable by the Office of Conscience, then it must invoke a debate, whether to sign or not sign, presentations for each side, and a nationwide referendum for signing after the debate. The order is presentation first, then debate, then referendum. If the signing side wins the debate and the population agrees with the referendum, then the treaty or agreement proposal returns to Council with a yes, otherwise, it returns with a no. Council then has the final word on whether to commit the nation to the treaty or agreement and ratifies it. If Council were to attempt to ratify the treaty without going through the Office of Priorities and the presentation, debate, referendum process, this is a major red flag corruption event that triggers the Office of Identity. It must then clear out the entire Council and form a new Council. If the Emperor or Empress participated in this attempt, he or she must be executed, as he or she knows the character test and his trials and can circumvent it, and has just committed an act of high treason. Other council members will be lucky if they live, as their deaths are optional, but I leave it up to the Office of Identity and its police force to determine the correct course of action here. All foreign agreements of any kind must involve the people's direct consent. Once the proposal is ratified, though, a signed treaty or agreement can be sent to the foreign nation via the Office of Foreign Relations. Every signed treaty or agreement requires a unified council vote and signatures of every council member. If there is an active emperor or empress, his or her signature is also required. If there is no emperor or empress, the signature is not required and council can proceed on its own. If, however, a treaty or agreement would require a modification to either the constitution or the nation's identity, then an emperor or empress's approval is required. As such, an agreement will require a directive of light to implement it. Agreements like this would be any kind of agreement that involves joining a union or alliance, becoming a suzerain or vassal state, or anything that affects the nation's sovereignty and core operation. The Office of Foreign Relations maintains an index of all active treaties and agreements. It coordinates with the Office of Rightness to ensure proposals align with the nation's agreements. When it comes to representing the nation in international events, the Council can send a special envoy for these occasions. That envoy can be a member of Council, a dedicated position for the purpose, such as a viceroy, or an ambassador. I leave that decision to the Council. I know a great many people want to do away with the hierarchies of government and of power. I do as well. The problem with that is it creates a power vacuum if somebody actually does try to create a flat society. Power vacuums create openings for abuse and conquering. International law will also not recognize such a society. My proposal for a new society founded on respect and with a better form of government solves all of these problems. It is possible to develop a nation that has no need for a military, especially if its people are capable of defending themselves and supported by their government. If, however, you do need a military, here is how it would fit into the system. The office of the military is an adjunct office that reports directly to council. This office is responsible for managing the nation's defensive and aggressive posture, as well as waging war. It liaises directly with the Council of Witness and the Office of Manifestation to carry out proposals that involve use of force. The office of the military is headed by a triune admiral. The triune admiral has the same qualification requirements as council in terms of passing the character test. The direct reports to the Triune Admiral are realm admirals, and these positions map to the princes and princesses of the realms with their character qualification requirements. This also means there could be a maximum of 8 realm admirals. Under the realm admirals are fleet admirals, and their ranking continues from there. The military operates as its own system and is generally autonomous. It may auto defend any part of the nation's territory and border of its own volition by any targeted kinetic or energetic means it has available and deems necessary. Use of weapons that have the potential for mass casualties, such as bioweapons, chemical weapons, and nukes, require Council's approval. The military may also auto rescue anybody calling for help within its range. The military outranks any and every police force in the nation except the Office of Identity's police force, which outranks the military. Strategy for military actions is the domain of the Office of Military. They should plan the nation's defense and come up with plans for any kind of aggressive situation as well. Neither the Council of Witness nor the Emperor Empress nor any of the people have any authority to instruct the military on its planning, and certainly not to conduct military operations. When there is a need for aggressive military action, whether that be by acquiring territory by force or waging war, or even just attacking foreign vehicles and soldiers that are not an immediate defense threat, proposals must be made to the Office of Priorities for these situations. The processing is the same as what was described for the Office of Foreign Relations, which is to say that the proposal runs through the system at least once to determine reasonableness, rightness, and conscionableness, and then gets a presentation, debate, and referendum from the people. Then it is signed by council and an emperor before being given as an order to the triune admiral. If the proposal process is bypassed by the council or the emperor, or if a military under the triune admiral acts without a processed order, then this is a red flag corruption event which triggers the Office of Identity. The Office of Identity's police force will clear out council and the emperor as mentioned before. It will also investigate and clear out everybody in the military who participated in the unsanctioned act. It will expunge everyone around the one who shot first, as well as their superior officers, one or two up the chain of command. The penalties for corruption are harsh because aggressive acts also affect foreign relations, which can have very serious consequences for the nation. These consequences must be understood and accepted by the people with their consent before aggressive actions can be taken. When the military secures the border around the nation, it should establish a neutral zone so that no one from either side enters the space. The military may freely patrol their side of the neutral zone as they see fit. Travelers should cross the zone at appropriate checkpoints by appropriate means. The Office of Research is an adjunct office that reports directly to Council. This office is responsible for managing the nation's technological and scientific research. It works with the Office of Manifestation to bring forth improved technology and scientific processes for manifestation. All such technology and scientific processes are publicly available to members of the nation. Of course, the Office of Research also works with all the other offices as well. A core competency of this office is the ability to plan tech trees. A technology tree is a hierarchical plan that maps your present technology to future desired technologies and tries to identify the intermediary steps to get there. Ideally, it could even further identify the funding and resource requirements for each step in the tree. For example, if I want to get to replication technology as seen in Star Trek, then I need the ability to assemble things atom by atom. I can either get those atoms out of thin air, which is atom creation technology, or teleport them from a source material, atom teleportation technology. Before I get to the atomic stage, I might need to first learn how to assemble things in this way, which is atomic manufacturing technology, which itself requires several iterations on 3D printing technology. The tech tree to get from 3D printing to replication is thus 3D printing to atomic manufacturing to atomic teleportation to replication. Of course, there may also be other technologies required that are unknown. Perhaps atomic teleportation requires holding atoms in magnetic fields, which means that it has a dependency on magnetic containment technology. It is really just an exercise in thinking through the problems and trying to map out how to get from A to B to C at a high level. Tech trees allow council to plan the long term technological direction for the nation. It informs priorities, budgets, equipment, infrastructure, military strategies, and quality of life of the people and any and all subsequent proposals. The Office of Research is right at home in Triune Democracies for two fundamental reasons. The first is that democracies are excellent at innovation. The second is that the system we have designed is very adept at working with knowledge. Out of necessity, the Office of Research is also a law, science, and spiritual office, even though the technology side gets all the glory. Laws are the rules that determine how this reality works. External laws are the physical laws, and internal laws are the spiritual laws. Science is the process of finding those laws. Technologies are the tools and techniques we make to work with those laws. Law, science, spirituality, and technology are all related to each other. We fundamentally work with all of them simultaneously when we think well. We build on our thinking and knowledge to empower ourselves in these areas. The Office of Research and Council must never lose sight of the requirement to keep both technology and spirituality in balance, or the nation and its people will go off track and become corrupt. It must know which technologies to pursue and which not to pursue. To this end, proposals to initiate research into developing a specific technology must first go through the Office of Priorities. These are processed as normal, and the Council can send the approved proposal to the Office of Research to begin its work. The Office of Research should maintain an organized knowledge base of known laws, science techniques, and technological developments, including demonstrations, explanations, and even hands on interactive labs of how they work. This is so that the people may access these new developments, apply them to their lives, and maybe even commercialize them. The Office of Development is an adjunct office that reports directly to Council. This office is responsible for planning the nation's infrastructure. It works with Council and the Office of Manifestation to bring forth those plans when there are proposals that utilize them. Infrastructure is a bit more complicated than roads and zoning. It involves life support, cleanliness, beauty, function, of course, accessibility, and physics. In this system, we have 8 realms to deal with and 8 different kinds of physical environments. Each realm is going to have its own unique set of infrastructure requirements. How life support works in one realm is going to be different from how it works in another. How buildings are constructed is going to be different from realm to realm. The Office of Development is a planning office, like an urban planner or other such planner. They help council and maybe even the people to come up with plans. The Office of Manifestation is the implementation office. When anyone works with this office, they may come up with a plan, but for that plan to be implemented, it has to be proposed via the Office of Priorities, at which point it makes its way through the system as normal. Thus, the Council of Witness has at least 5 supporting offices to help it plan and lead the development of the nation. Offices exist to assist Council with planning and managing the nation's wealth, international relations, military, research, and development. You might think additional offices are needed, such as for health, and I would not disagree with you, but I leave that up to you to decide based on your needs if you use this template. The key point is that these are planning offices that assist Council. All implementation is still initiated by Council and must run through the system via the Office of Priorities at least once before it goes to the Office of Manifestation for implementation. Where the consequences of a wrong decision are more severe, you can follow the proposal process as described for the Office of Foreign Relations. No proposal can go to the Office of Manifestation directly without first going through the system at least once. This safeguard helps keep the nation on track in reality over time, helps keep proposals at a high quality level, and it thwarts corruption of the proposal and the process. Council members are free to do whatever they want in the system. They can operate of their own volition and free will to lead in whatever way they find best. They can access each office whenever they want. They can work individually, in small groups, or all together in unison. They can work council as though it were a job or treat it like a board of directors. There are only 2 rules that really matter. Nothing is done without first submitting a proposal to the Office of Priorities, and matured proposals require a unified council and every council member's signature for implementation. Thus far, we have spent a lot of time on implementing infrastructure via the Office of Manifestation, but we have not yet discussed legislation in any capacity. The existing legislation model is based on transactional thinking: judgment, order, bill, charge, and all of this is encoded into an act. A new model must be found as transactional thinking is incompatible with a triune democracy. Let us start with judgment. Nothing originates with judgments in a triune democracy. Legislation originates with proposals. Proposals can be used for infrastructure and they can also be used for legislation. The same process applies regardless of context. This, of course, means that anyone qualified in a triune democracy can propose legislation. Once legislation is approved, it is submitted to the Office of Manifestation as normal. The Office of Manifestation also manages the legislative code for the nation and updates the code with the requested changes. If the legislation is scoped to a specific local area, it is forwarded to that particular area for the local office to update its local code. There is no equivalent concept of orders or bills, nor charges in a triune democracy because the system does not work that way. As any individual member of society can propose new legislation, each new legislative proposal can be considered a broadcasted offer to contract. Some person is saying, "Hey, everybody, I would like you to behave in such and such a way for these reasons." You have two choices when this occurs: agree and opt in, or disagree and opt out. The Office of Manifestation is responsible for keeping records of who agrees with this legislative proposal. This is not a system that uses violence to obtain its ends. Since this is a contract, if you agree and opt in, there has to be equal consideration for your needs. If the contract wants you to behave in a certain way that is different from how you currently behave, it has to offer something to you to get your agreement. I do not know what that could be, but I would suggest that free training and compensation of some kind is part of the offer. Once an agreement has been made, it becomes law with that person and they cannot opt out. It is also law for new citizens automatically. The new law does not apply to people who have disagreed and opted out. It cannot be forced on them either. Legislative proposals are expensive both in terms of buy in and agreement tracking. Therefore, in general, there should not be many legislative proposals unless they're absolutely necessary. A better practice is to post best practices and recipe guides that people are recommended to follow but are free to bend and break the rules when they need to be broken. People doing so ought to be experienced and wise enough to know when to do that. What happens if someone does low quality work? They will have acted in dishonor and their reputation will be damaged. The community may host honor rolls and dishonor rolls, which in essence recommend who to do business with and who not to do business with. As the dishonored will have a very difficult time making a living, they will be demoted to a class that requires them to think on things in life before they can ascend again. If the nation has a life support system, this will catch and support them so they don't fall into oblivion, but they should use the opportunity to learn why it is wrong to do low quality work. This is an elevation strategy rather than a punishment strategy, and it works to improve the ignorant being at the point they are ready to learn with self reflection, self learning, self knowledge, and available training. If their character development is strong enough, they should also acknowledge the loss they cause to their customer and voluntarily remedy, and this can be included in their training. All of the complications with respect to legislation can be avoided by building competent and purposeful infrastructure. You can control behavior without violating free will by controlling the environment. It is more appropriate than directly forcing people to act a certain way under threat of state violence. There should not need to be any kind of enforcement, but if there is, one of the duties will be to check if the person has agreed to the legislative code being violated. This society will work best if the people are trained to a certain level of character development. The character triad and self control should be mandatory education from the parents as well as from the elementary schools. That will enable a lot of peaceful behaviors I described. Bylaws are the local laws of the city, small town, or community. A more technical definition has them being related to a corporation. In any event, these are the rules by which a community works, and they are encoded into things like the zoning bylaw, building bylaw, etc. In a triune democracy, the local municipal council is replaced with its own miniature triune democratic system, which we call the local system model. And therefore, the manner in which legislation is created applies to bylaws as well. This means that the local system has to maintain an agreement registry of everybody and or their lot for who has opted into which bylaw. The manner in which property and land are traded should be made explicit. There is apparently a difference between owning the land and owning the buildings on the land, and these are not necessarily sold together, which means there can be multiple owners in the same spatial area. As much as possible, everything should be tied and grouped up with the land patent so as to keep one spatial area and all of its contents together as one, but I can understand why there might need to be differences. For this, I would suggest that the documentation makes things explicit and references land patent or missing land patent, property or missing property. Maybe even the concept of developing spatial areas and sectors has merit. The land patent approach is terrestrial after all, and a framework will need to be found for the other types of environments. How will community orderliness work? By explicit agreement. There is no authority to make a dictate and force everybody to follow it. At the local level or at the national level, whenever anybody makes legislation, everybody has to opt in for it to have any effect. During the opt in process, it might be that somebody needs a modification to the legislation for their specific use case. At this point, a variation can be negotiated before they agree. Variations by agreement already exist in the current system and in international law, but this process makes it more explicit. It makes things conscious, empowers the people, and gives them the opportunity to be responsible. Triune democracies are built on personal responsibility. This is not a system where abdication of responsibility is helpful or useful. There is no enforcement of legislation in a triune democracy. At best, all a police officer can do is ensure people are honoring their agreements. As agreements are tailored to each specific individual, enforcement can become challenging. There is also the fact that enforcement uses violence to achieve its means, and this is not a system that uses violence to coerce the people to meet its objectives. It is not enough to have a new democratic system and assume all will be well. The best thinking of the people on this planet brought them to a tyranny. The people allowed their enemies to take over and wage war against them using their own systems. As I write this, people are being lied to and exterminated because that is what happens in a planetary tyranny. The thinking of the people must change. They must learn how to be of good character and how to be responsible human beings. It is in the conduct of honor that the society achieves its orderliness without need for enforcement. In tandem with a triune democracy, the culture, education, and upbringing must emphasize what goes into building a strong human being first, and then teach them skills for doing tasks so that they can work. I have mentioned the character triad a lot, but there is more to it than that. Knowledge of self and soul, what health is and how to maintain it, self defense, manners, decorum, protocol, politeness, and recognition that harming others harms the society, which also harms self, are all very important to a properly functioning society. The system is nothing but an aid to a society of strong characters. It is on the strength of the characters of the people in the society that the society functions well by agreement. As the culture raises people to be responsible, they can be trusted with arming themselves. The population must know how to kill and be armed not only so they know where the line is, but also in case they do encounter somebody who is causing violence, they can intercept and stop it right there. So that people are not burdened with carrying a weapon all the time, I also suggest small armories throughout the territory that they can access when they need. However, only those who have proven themselves responsible by achieving a minimum score on the character test should have these abilities. You would not give a gun to a child who does not know any better. It might be that police are still useful in their functions of traffic management, investigations, and managing situations. On that part, I can only say that it depends what the society wants. I will say that they do not have the ability to arrest anyone because there will be no such legislation, and there are no prisons either. Arrests are in and of themselves an act of violence and merit defensive action, and no one in their right mind would agree to allow someone else to harm them if they misbehaved. In our book, we went over in explicit detail how the legal system is nothing more than a control system profiteering off conflict. It has no place in a triune democracy when it comes to controlling law. The system design of a triune democracy is controlled solely by the Emperor Empress, who has the final say on how the society should work due to his or her immense qualifications. The people in the system carry out their functions according to their roles, and the sum total of all of that creates a functioning society with competent leadership. There is no place in the system where adversarial decisions create a law based on the whims of a judge who can be bribed, corrupted, and is nowhere near as qualified as an emperor or empress. There is further no coordinated corruption nor hidden backdoors possible in a triune democracy, unlike in the legal systems of the world. The business of conflict resolution is then opened up to the people who may create their own resolution businesses and compete on their merits. They do not have enforcement ability, so they must be good at coming out with satisfactory resolution and also good at encouraging the cooperation of the people involved. Yes, the legal system itself is forbidden from having a monopoly on conflict resolution in a triune democracy. In general, the expectation is that people work out their own problems by themselves. The character triad and understanding of honor will help in that regard. Remember that all of this occurs in the context of a proper upbringing of the people. For those who are still children, they are going to learn a harsh lesson and will have to grow up. The days of taking advantage of your fellow man to get ahead are over because that behavior hurts the entire society and it has no place in a triune democracy. If you do have a conflict with somebody else, it is on you to make sure their needs are genuinely met in addition to yours. When we all learn how to look out for and love each other, then at the systemic societal level, we can live in a civilization that is truly awesome. We can take advantage of the implicit trust in everyone and reduce costs, labor, and overhead to build a world we truly want. But this only works if the people in that society are brought up properly and raised in a culture that reinforces good behavior. Human nature is programmable, after all. It is not good nor evil, it is programmable, and it is what the society makes it. What happens if there are two or more proposals in the system at the same time and they conflict? This can happen, and it might even be a common occurrence. In this case, the Office of Priorities will collect all conflicting proposals together and organize a public presentation by each side, then a debate, and then a vote. The proposal that wins the debate and vote goes forward while the others die. Now, it might be that the defeated proposals have good ideas that could be merged into the winning proposal. This may occur at the discretion of the winner. Proposals can always be modified at any point in the system before they make it to council. Anytime a proposal is modified, it goes around the system once again. The Office of Priorities can only promote matured proposals that have gone through a full circuit with no modifications. What happens if a proposal conflicts with existing policy in any context? This also might be a fairly common occurrence. The same procedure as before comes into effect. The Office of Priorities will collect all conflicting proposals and the implemented proposal or legislation and organize a public presentation, debate, and vote. The difference is the author of the new proposal will have to prove why their idea is meritocratically better than the current implemented idea. In the processing of legislation conflicts, the system functions similar to a regular democracy, only the participation isn't by representatives, but instead by everybody involved. Voting is done by whoever attends and participates. Both the system and the people are wise to the law of thought. Arguments along the lines of, we're conservative and we need conservative votes, or we're liberals and we need liberal votes, will have no merit. The same goes for efficiencies and immigrants. Authors and debaters must be able to take their arguments to a higher level of thought and demonstrate the validity of their idea at that level. The Office of Priorities can set the rules and format for the debate and is expected to track logical fallacies and deduct points for them. It also moderates the debates, to be clear. Winning a debate is not just about getting a vote, it is about a high score and an idea that can stand on its merits. What happens if somebody buys a product and it is defective, or if work done on a house is not up to the quality expected, or if a business backs out of a corporate deal, or if a business engages in fraud? Prevention is the best policy here. Do business honorably with expectations clearly communicated and good contracts and agreements drawn up and honored. If there is a conflict, businesses should try to solve it amongst themselves first, but if they are unable to do so, they would need to seek the services of a conflict resolution business to help sort it out. The Triune Democratic system of governance does not use conflict resolution as a tactic in its system and is therefore unable to solve business conflicts. My advice would be to treat your business as a little nation and follow the law of nations, which ultimately suggests that the only way to achieve peace and avoid conflict at the international level is for nations or businesses to honor their agreements and behave honorably. The same conflict resolution procedures for businesses apply to the individual human members of society. Behave honorably, sort it out yourselves, or seek the assistance of a conflict resolution business. What about people who deliberately defraud others, or rape or murder? What about people who have no interest in behaving honorably? It must be legal in the society for the people to be armed so that they may invoke the defensive action part of morality to dissuade and dispatch those who would try to bring them harm. An armed populace is a polite and respectful populace. This will keep the criminal element at bay. To avoid the burden of people carrying weapons all the time, many armories can be dispersed throughout the territory that are easily accessible to qualified people. Those qualified have achieved a minimum score on the character test that shows them to be responsible. Remember that all of this occurs in the context of a properly raised population. Those who did not receive such an upbringing will need to be trained to be a part of this society. Triune democracies are significantly more resistant to corruption than any system of governance tried before. It is not merely a simple system that uses checks and balances to keep things in order. It understands corruption at the soul level and is designed to thwart corruption before it becomes a problem. Triune democracies understand corruption. Remember that to understand something means to break it down to its component parts and then to rebuild it in words you understand. We did that earlier with respect to our model of our being. We were very big on self respect to keep the integrity of that model intact. In our book, we studied all the ways that model can be disrupted and how we can incur damage in our beings. These same principles apply to triune democracies because their design is based on the same concepts scaled up with all of the inherent lessons and features as well. The same damage to ourselves applies to triune democracies. The same protection self respect gives also applies. Therefore, at the system and at the soul level, triune democracies understand corruption and have the tools to keep it at bay. They are the same tools that you have to keep your own being intact: self respect, morality, and honor. It might be that parties form in an attempt to sway the votes of a debate from the office of priorities. I would hope that this does not happen because the population is educated in the law of thought and knows better. But if it does, the office of priorities controls the voting arena and the method of voting. Voting is open to everyone in the nation. Should any party attempt to prevent voting in any area by anybody, the office of priorities is authorized to shut them down for interference in a debate. The Office of Priorities is a neutral office and is only concerned with its function, prioritizing its backlog of proposals. All other concerns, including political concerns, are out of scope for it. It cannot be touched or coerced by a political party. It is also not possible nor worthwhile for elections to be stolen. There are only two sets of positions in this system where elections can be run: council and the lowest levels of the Office of Manifestation, the Baron level. Elections are optional for council because the method of sending people to council can differ by race, region, or whatever other criteria. Barons are mere administrators and they can serve in this or higher capacities during their career, but they have no say in how things go. They are not decision makers. Even if somebody tried to steal council elections, council members themselves don't have much power. They have resources in terms of each other and the adjunct offices, but their only real decision power is in approving or rejecting proposals in unison. Long before attempts at party politics would be successful, members of council, as well as many people throughout the system, would see what is happening. The law of thought and its application to politics is required study for serving in the system. Everyone would be wise to the scheme and be especially vigilant in order to protect their democracy. This vigilance would especially raise the suspicion of the Office of Identity in case any of that corruption did try to seep its way into the system. Consider the situation where a party manages to elect all of their chosen members to council, their own man or woman from each race, region, or other criteria. Whatever system was employed, the party captured and manipulated it to get their people on council. The Office of Identity has as its primary goal to preserve the nation's identity. It is always on the lookout for corruption as part of that mandate. If a scenario like the above were to occur, the people among the races and regions would complain, both publicly and to the Office of Identity. The office must act on complaints, and it will investigate council and the circumstances of their election. That a party had formed and elected everyone, though not illegal, is in and of itself highly suspicious. The Office of Identity might take a precautionary approach and jettison the entire newly elected council, forbid the party from participating in elections, and call for new elections. It will do that anyway if it does actually find corruption, but in this case, you also want to avoid the appearance of corruption. The design of the system makes it hard to understand why anyone would want to capture council anyway. The only benefit that gives is the ability to control which proposals are approved and sent to the Office of Manifestation. Everybody can already make their own proposals, so setting direction isn't a motive for capturing council. Holding the nation hostage so that only chosen proposals go through could be a motive, but those proposals still must go through the system, and proposals that are wrong for the nation won't even make it to council. So the hostage motive doesn't really yield much benefit either. A captured council might try to bypass the system entirely and send proposals directly to the Office of Manifestation. First of all, proposals that make it to the Office of Manifestation are incredibly detailed and have numerous attachments to them from most, if not all, offices. The Office of Manifestation can verify with each office whether the proposal went through it. Secondly, proposals are lengthy, and the Office of Manifestation will be used to a certain level of quality. If it is found to be lacking, that will raise suspicion. If a breach of protocol, like a forged proposal, is ever detected, that is a red flag corruption event that will trigger the Office of Identity. Office capture, also known as bureaucratic capture, is what happens when all of the administrative employees in any or all offices become corrupt. This is the situation we see in the planetary tyranny of 2021, where all of our governments and all of our institutions are engaged in a war of extermination against their own people. If the people suspect corruption in any office in this system, they may raise a complaint directly to the Office of Identity. The Office of Identity must investigate in a timely manner and do one of two things. In the case of no corruption, reply to the complainant detailing what they investigated and how it is not corruption, including how the office is operating according to policy, and explain what the policy is. In the case of corruption, the office will confirm to the complainant that there is in fact corruption and then invoke its mandate. It will dismantle the entire corrupt office or offices. Everyone, innocent or guilty, will be fired and banned from the system forever. The corrupt office will then be rebuilt according to the template on file and populated with new people. In the event the Office of Identity is itself corrupt, then the people can make a complaint directly to the Emperor or Empress. If there is no sitting Emperor or Empress, the people must create one. That will require raising a human being capable of exceptional strength of character and spiritual development, able to pass the character test and pass its trials. To ensure the Emperor or Empress does not fall to the dark side, he or she might be raised in a harsh environment and endured a brutal life, but is able to rise above it with intelligence and compassion. When the Emperor or Empress needs to dismantle the Office of Identity, he or she must invoke the ruler archetype and can then proceed by any means necessary. That may mean cutting funding to the old office and firing everybody, or it may mean getting the military on his or her side and destroying it. He or she can then rebuild the Office of Identity with new people. Everyone, innocent or guilty, in the old office is banned from the system forever. It may also be necessary for the Emperor or Empress to dissolve the Council of Witness and rebuild it, which he or she may also do, but only simultaneously with the Office of Identity in an act of clearing out corruption. This act clears out the entire system of corruption. From here, the new Office of Identity can flush and rebuild every other office. This is the only legal way for a coup to occur in the system. It is an avenue of remedy that is led by the people, bypasses the entire system, and aligns with universal laws of justice and spirituality. The people literally raise their own emperor or empress and slay the corruption. If there already is a sitting emperor or empress, he or she ought to investigate the corruption himself or herself and depose the Office of Identity as above. If this emperor or empress refuses and is himself or herself corrupt, the people may raise a new emperor or empress, destroy the old emperor or empress, and proceed as above to clear the corruption. All the new emperor or empress needs to do to qualify is pass the character test and its trials. Suppose there is someone who is able to pass the character test and his trials and becomes emperor. Every emperor is going to have an agenda, and that is fine. What if the agenda is to the detriment of the nation and its people? What if the agenda is to destroy the nation and betray its people? The dynamic between the emperor or empress, the council of witness, and the office of identity is not a hierarchy. It is more like a game of rock, paper, scissors, where one player can take out another player, but no one can take out the other two. It is a dynamic that keeps things in balance. The emperor or empress is the rock. The nation and its identity were founded by this position, and it is entrusted with keeping the nation in check. Ordinarily, the emperor or empress outranks the council of witness and the office of identity. When either are corrupt, the emperor or empress can jettison and rebuild the office of identity and then work with it to fix council. Rock beats scissors. The council of witness is the paper. They deal with the proposals, managing and directing them, researching and creating them, and have the final say on them. The council of witness does not outrank anyone, but being paper, it can defeat the rock. The council of witness is authorized to execute corrupt emperors or empresses as soon as they detect corruption. Paper beats rock. A word of caution: if an emperor or empress is executed without justification, it will trigger the office of identity. The Office of Identity is the scissors. Charged with maintaining the nation's identity and integrity, it can cut up any other part of the system that shows signs of corruption, including the Council of Witness. Scissors beats paper. The rock, paper, scissors dynamic ensures corruption is detected and thwarted before it becomes a problem at the highest levels. These three parts of the system are always watching what the other is doing and are ready to pounce if needed to ensure its integrity. Finally, as the precedent setting year of 2021 showed us, it is possible for an entire system to become corrupt at the same time. This would be the result of slow and methodical infiltrations over decades by enemy actors in all parts of the system simultaneously, possibly in combination with a degeneration of the population and their ability to defend themselves compromised. I would hope that the design of the system is robust enough to thwart such an invasion, but if it isn't, the following will occur. When the system begins acting against the best interests of the people, it separates from the people and becomes a separate nation. The system, as one nation, maintains its sovereignty and international recognition. The people, a nation without sovereignty, are now under occupation. The system, as a nation, declares war against the people, however implicitly, nation to nation. The system nation need not officially declare a war, it just has to act in coordination to suppress the people. The people nation are now in a fight for their survival and are authorized to dispatch the occupying nation by any means necessary. The people should organize with the military, who hopefully are also not corrupt. If the nation does not have a military, the people themselves should clear out the corruption. The entire system, from the Emperor, Empress, Council of Witness, and all of its offices, should be destroyed. They and all their staff are enemy combatants. Once the system is destroyed, it can be rebuilt anew when the people once again put forth a qualified emperor or empress, or they may try something else. If the above action is not possible, the only alternative is to flee and or build something new. Follow the instructions in our book, section 671, How to Come Out from Under Tyranny, and pursue the path of self-determination. Though it should be sufficient in most cases to raise an emperor or empress, then clear out the office of identity, then rebuild it from there. What happens if anyone serving in the system is bribed or blackmailed? This situation should be thwarted from the beginning by the character test, which specifically measures their character for resistance to corruption. However, we must not rely entirely on that mechanism, for people grow or fall and change, and there is always the possibility that there could be a hostage situation involving loved ones. The bribed or blackmailed individual should report the bribery or blackmail to the Office of Identity as soon as possible. As long as it is promptly reported, consequences to the individual and their office can be avoided. The Office of Identity will liaise with the right people, such as military, police, investigators, etc., to investigate and prosecute the crime. It is understood that sometimes you have to make an agreement under duress to get out of a situation. If the corruption goes on too long before it is reported, and especially if it is discovered without being reported, the Office of Identity can invoke its mandate and flush the affected offices. In the world today, there is a big problem in democracies where elected individuals serve in companies before and or after their public term and are able to create favorable policy for the company. They are rewarded with lucrative jobs for this service. It is a weakness of the current system that allows corporate control over a country and the betrayal of that country by its politicians. There are surprisingly few elections in a triune democracy, and of those who are elected, there may not be much in the way of term limits. The elected do not have near the amount of power that politicians in representative democracies have. As well, the offices are more corporate and hire and fire whoever they need whenever they need to do the jobs that are required. There is very little possibility for a revolving door, and if one were attempted, it would accomplish very little. The Office of Rightness would also put a stop to any such policy that would benefit a corporation at the expense of the people. Anyone in any position, whether elected or hired, is free to stay on as long as they like or quit whenever they like. No single position controls the destiny of the country, so the risks involved in keeping people on longer are lower. With a clear idea of how this system works, we can now turn our attention to how businesses work in a nation run by a triune democracy. Triune democracies work with certain key concepts. The law of thought is one of them, and so every business and corporation is recognized as a thought. A legal entity is a thought. We do not want people to fall into perdition, so we will not allow situations where a human being can be bound to and controlled by a thought. That is one of the reasons why all legislation is opt-in for people. Corporations, or any thought for that matter, are not treated the same way as human beings. They are recognized as thoughts and will be managed in the way that thoughts are managed. The nation will need to build expertise in this area, which is still very much undiscovered, even by me. Suffice it to say, corporations and people are not the same thing and are not treated the same way. As thoughts do not have free will, neither do corporations. Legislation that applies to corporations is mandatory for them. The people of the nation comprise the national market, so it is the people that determine the rules of their market through their triune democracy and legislation. Businesses and corporations have no choice but to follow them if they want access to the market. In a triune democracy, personal responsibility is the key to success. Individuals who can own their quality work and behave honorably with repute do not need to incorporate. They take on the full risk of responsibility, but they also dodge all of the corporate legislative requirements and therefore reap significant rewards. This capability is only available to individuals. They may not be an apprentice nor have an apprentice because that triggers employ. The work of the individual is not a thought. What is commonly understood as their business is actually the free expression of their work. Triune democracies do not, under any circumstances, interfere with the freedom and expression of individuals. Some jobs require multiple people to do. Guilds can be formed among people of a similar skill set. Individuals can belong to more than one guild. Guilds do not tell individuals what to do and have no say in what clients an individual accepts. Individuals can draw on the guild for other individuals when he or she needs help with a job. A guild is a thought and is therefore bound by legislation. It is the lowest form of corporation, so its requirements should be pretty light. Guilds may train apprentices. However, the apprentice cannot be in the employ of an individual in the guild. He or she must make his or her own way and find his or her own work using the guild to build skills. To this end, guilds may also purchase and build structures, a guild hall, if you will, where skill building can take place. Individuals in the guild may, of course, seek the assistance of an apprentice to help build their skills. The key takeaway here is that the apprentice is not in the employ of the more experienced individual. They are training for their own business. A group of people with different but complementary skill sets is a party. Parties have a maximum size in terms of the number of people they can have, but I leave it up to you to determine what that ought to be. I might suggest a chief executive officer, an accountant, a planner, an implementer, and a customer liaison as a minimum party template. Parties can also be thoughts and are therefore bound by legislation. They are another light form of corporation, so their requirements should be pretty minimal, but they are more than guilds. Parties may be partnerships among every member of the party, in which case each member assumes responsibility for the success of the party. This option is useful because it prevents employment. Alternatively, parties may be owned and led by their chief executive officer and have everyone else be employees. As there is an inherent lack of responsibility here, tougher legislation is likely to be encountered. Parties are equivalent to small businesses. Larger parties over a set size may be known as houses if and only if everyone working for it is in the responsibility position. Houses are owned and led by the owner, and everyone working for it is either an individual, a guild, or a partnership party. All arrangements are by contract and not by employment. The advantage of houses is that everyone involved is taking responsibility for themselves, and therefore the need for regulation is lowered. They can get away with lighter legislation requirements because they do not have employees. Therefore, they can be more nimble, efficient, and possibly competent. Houses can be businesses of any size and offer many networking benefits. Businesses in the typical sense comprised mostly of employees are known as corporations and are bound by the heaviest legislative requirements. Corporations are not allowed to buy parties, guilds, and houses, though they can buy other corporations. Corporations are the big businesses that we know of today. Due to their use of employment, which is a more sophisticated form of slavery, or peonage, they are heavily regulated to avoid placing the employee in perdition. There are effectively two tracks of ownership, those that utilize employees and those that do not. Of those that utilize employees, which are corporations or employment parties, singular and shared ownership is allowed. Corporations and employment parties may also be owned by other corporations and employment parties. Of those that do not utilize employees, which are houses, partnership parties, guilds, and individuals, ownership is singular. Shared ownership is disallowed. Furthermore, none of these can be owned by corporations nor employment parties. It must be recognized that the employment track is a slavery track. I only include it here so that it can be considered for backwards compatibility with existing corporations. My personal preference is not to have employment at all. Due to the harm these kinds of corporations bring, they are heavily regulated. The non-employment track is a freedom track where everyone owns their labor and its bounty. It is the preferred track because it helps people avoid perdition. For this track, I advise the nation set up best practices per industry that can be followed but deviated from when necessary. Caution must be used by businesses whose quality is below standard, for it could be seen by customers as stealing quality, which would cause a conflict. A major requirement of this system is to facilitate the most freedom possible and prevent people from falling into perdition. How is this accomplished? Perdition is the artificial binding of a human to a thought. As long as we avoid this situation, the people can live perdition free. We have just looked at using best practices instead of legislation for quality of work. This is one way to avoid perdition. We also looked at the idea that when there is legislation, it is opt in. This is another way to avoid perdition because it forces the government to work with the people and seek their consent and agreement. In tandem with the above, if the nation were to build a life support system and thereby give its population the ability to say no, a lot of abusive agreement situations can be averted and another cause of perdition sealed off. The system of government itself avoids perdition for the people involved in it. The people running it in any capacity, whether emperor, council member, prince, duke, marquis, or even CEO of an office, none of these positions are bound by any legislation except that which they have explicitly agreed to, though there would be a contract for taking on their specific role, of course. As long as they are doing their jobs and fulfilling their functions, they are free to do it however they see fit, and the same goes for their employees. The system does not allow rule by authority except in extremely rare circumstances, and therefore appeals to authority as a way of life are not possible. In addition to rule by a dictator, authority could also mean following the science, following the experts. The system does not allow for such fallacies to its inherent design of discovering law and staying on the path of rightness. Both the people and government servants are spared from this kind of perdition. The educational requirements of a triune democracy further protect the population from perdition. Teaching the law of thought is mandatory education so that people can understand how their thinking works, how to develop their mind, and know what to do and what not to do with respect to mental activities. Therefore, education is another safeguard against perdition. As all things are thoughts, organizations based around political thoughts, like religions or non governmental organizations, like the United Nations, ought to be treated as foreign nations in their own right and prevented from setting up shop in the territory of a triune democracy. Ambassadorial or diplomatic communications and protocols should be followed. Maybe they can have an embassy or a consulate as well. In addition to the law of thought, the law of nations should also be used when dealing with these entities. Allowing them to work in the nation without supervision means they can subvert the population and possibly bind them to a thought of their creation. This would endanger those people and place them in perdition. They should be resistant to it anyway by education, but the possibility should not even be allowed because it takes time for the education to be developed and the young and inexperienced thinker will be susceptible. The types of businesses available in the nation are also chosen to avoid perdition. Only a couple business types break this rule: employment parties and corporations. These exist primarily to support backwards compatibility with existing corporations so that they may do business in the nation. It might be that for some operations, it just simply makes sense for it to be a corporation. The military, if it still uses chain of command, will place its soldiers in perdition. This can be countered by having the people also be the military, with them having the ability to defend themselves and access to the latest in weapons and defense technology. That might scare people in typical nations at this time, but I am envisioning a nation that is far more mature. Of course, the technology to enable this possibility would be different from today's technology. Courts of any kind do not have jurisdictional ability in a triune democracy. The people and council do as managed by the system. Thus, courts and the legal system cannot play their perdition games on the people at large. All they can do is solve conflicts without using force, and they will have competition so that the best conflict resolvers succeed in this industry. We ought to do some due diligence at this time to verify that the system design meets our requirements. The system must uplift people out of ignorance, perdition, and mind control. The core design of the system is that of a triune self with its parts, messages, and processes. As people study the system, they are studying themselves to a degree. The emphasis and protection of a character test further encourages preparation and learning, which dissuades ignorance. The focus on people driven self determination and consent avoids perdition. The requirement to know the law of thought and therefore the workings of the mind help avoid mind control. The system must be capable of destroying the planetary tyranny through obsolescence. A triune democracy is the most advanced form of democracy ever conceived. The very nature of its operation and concomitant culture creates systemic potential in the society and its people far beyond that which is presently possible in nation states today. As a new possibility, experience, and way of life, people will want to move to a triune democratic nation to experience it. Thus, the tyranny loses its people and therefore its fuel. The system must be able to adapt to the infinite game. There is no win condition for a triune democracy. Its existence does not depend on economic growth. It merely manages the affairs of state for a society. Its design mimics the thinking processes of humanity and scales up to galactic civilizations. The design also has no ambitions to be more than what it is. It is custodial in its nature for its people, and it prevents power mongers and ignorant people from corrupting the system due to its many anti corruption features. It is a system built to last for a people who deserve it. The fundamentals must be correct. The system recognizes that self governance is the key to a free and democratic society, and it forces the people to do the actual governing work while supporting them. The governing work is protected by the character test, which forces the people to learn to self govern. All of this encourages the people to embrace an ethos of discipline, self control, conscious direction, and of course, knowledge of law. If the people don't know their fundamentals, the society won't work. The system protects them from themselves when they are ignorant because it is itself built on solid fundamentals. Those fundamentals being knowledge of self, strength of character, law, systems, scaling, respect, morality, and honor. Recognition of the world as a forum and that people own their objects, actions, and events. The system does not in any way trespass upon anyone, neither their property nor their soul. A proper understanding of this concept, combined with the duties of the Office of Rightness, will prevent any triune democracy from taxing its people because taxation is a trespass on the property relation between a human being and the objects, actions, and events that he or she owns. The system must not operate through force. Triune democracies do not operate through force, they operate through explicit consent and agreement. Implied consent and tacit consent are inappropriate assumptions where matters of legislation and state are concerned. At all times, triune democracies are designed to and assist the leadership and people with maintaining the moral advantage. It does not engage in any immoral acts because those cause severe damage to the people. As there is presently an environment of mass psychological damage in the form of mass abandonment issues and generational abuse, the system's emphasis on character education will help the people heal this damage. The system should follow the Hermetic axiom. It does because it is modeled after the self. As a result, everyone who looks at its operation will be looking at themselves to a degree, which should prove enlightening to them. It also gives the society itself a systemic ability to think. Thinking well is one of the most important skills that can be developed, and it is also one of the hardest. The system's design should give a boost to individual and societal thinking ability. The system must contain anti corruption and anti infiltration features. In addition to the character tests and trials, the offices of identity, reason, rightness, realization, conscience, and even the council of witness, all of these have anti corruption features and duties inherent in their functions. The character test should stop infiltrators, but if one were to get in, the system design would force it to adhere to its role because that is the nature of systems. If many infiltrators were to get in, the system should detect and throw them out, but at that point it is up to the emperor to devise a stronger character test. The system must maintain its own integrity. People participating in it must be qualified, as elections are not sufficient to judge qualifications. The character test takes care of this to ensure the internal operation of the beings running the system are in perfect working order. The system must have quality control features. Every office in this system processes proposals according to their functions and mandates. The end result of all this processing is a proposal that is mature, balanced, right, informed, and high quality. In some cases, it may even have the backing of the people. This processing is what allows the people to bring their own proposals forward. The system shall not place people in perdition. It is a people driven system that encourages explicit consent and best practices over hard legislation. Where hard legislation is required, that is typically used on corporations, for they are mere thoughts and thoughts have no free will. they must be guided along a right path like water through a pipe. The system never forces itself on people and never forces them to obey dictates. As well, the people are free to deviate from best practices when they feel the situation calls for it. It recognizes that all things are contextual. The system shall be founded on respect. The character triad is used frequently in the system, and the design is such that no one can rule by fiat. Only the emperor can come close to the fiat rule, but he or she is checked by time, by council, and possibly by an autonomous military, so that rule won't be very effective if it isn't good. Respect for the people under its care is one of the foundational values of a triune democracy. The system shall be one of freedom. Freedom encourages innovation and free enterprise allows desires to be met. This is why the system is a democracy and not a republic. The more people that can participate in the system, the better everything is for everyone. Triune democracies are not typical democracies. There is no mob rule. There is no majority rule. And voting only helps win debates, not actual passing of laws. The system is designed not to degrade into tyranny. The system should recognize that the people in it will eventually outgrow it. It shall not trap its people into thinking they are children that must be eternally cared for. The children must grow up and have the opportunity to leave the societal nest. The system meets this requirement with its emphasis on personal and office self-determination. It supports those who have matured enough to no longer need the provisions of a triune democratic society. They may go out on their own, and they will always have an ally in their home state. The system should be able to operate in a steady state capacity. The nature of proposal processing is slow and much like that of a stress tolerating tree. When a proposal does make it through, it is guaranteed to be good, supportive, and long lasting, like a tree. Most of the time, there is no reason for change. The system optimizes for planning stages and implementation stages and expects that these stages can go on for many years. It is entirely comfortable with long periods of inactivity. When there is no work to do, offices can simply shut down and keep their employees on retainer to be recalled when there is work. Archetypes are systems of readiness for action and at the same time images and emotions. They are inherited with a brain structure. Indeed, they are its psychic aspect. They represent, on the one hand, a very strong instinctive conservatism, while on the other hand, they are the most effective means conceivable of instinctive adaptation. They are thus essentially the xonic portion of the psyche, if we may use such an expression, that portion through which the psyche is attached to nature, or in which its link to the world is most tangible. The psychic influence of the earth and its laws is seen most clearly in these primordial images. Carl Jung. The office of expression in a triune democracy works with 12 archetypes and 2 modes. These are preset definitions that allow the nation to configure and optimize itself for certain situations at certain times. As the system is a model after yourself, the number 12 is extremely important because it is showing you that you have 12 major archetypes in your being. Even if Council changes sides from its default 12 pairs, the Office of Expression's use of 12 will also help clue people in, perhaps even more so due to the representation of the archetypes. Archetypes affect every part of the system. They affect the offices, both major and minor. They affect budgets. They affect military posture. They affect council priorities, and they may even affect directives. This section will go over the archetypes and modes in more detail and explain how they affect each part of the system. The ruler archetype can be initiated only by the emperor or empress. It is for those times when a human being of exceptional great character must take control of the nation and lead. The ruler archetype reconfigures the system for swift mobilization and programmability. It enables the use of 2 orders, the Order of Light and the Order of Focus. These are directives that only require the emperor or empress's signature and go to their respective offices of identity and manifestation. Through the Order of Focus, the emperor or empress is also, in effect, able to order the military. The Office of Manifestation cannot accept directives of focus during the ruler archetype. Therefore, though proposals may be processed and approved by council, they will not be implemented during this time. There are times when mobilization is desired. These are emergency times when quick action becomes a priority. The ruler archetype temporarily turns the democracy into a dictatorship so that mobilization can be achieved. However, It greatly introduces the possibility of risk and leadership causing harm to the nation. Therefore, the ruler archetype can only be used for a short period of time, and once exhausted, cannot be used again for a long period of time. Other times, some change might just need to be forced through, especially if there is deadlock in the council. Though, as mentioned, this could be risky, and the wise emperor or empress will always try to achieve the consent of council rather than invoking the ruler. Use the ruler archetype during times of great chaos or when the nation is at risk of losing itself, either to chaos, confusion, or enemy action. Use the ruler archetype to lead the nation to victory, prosperity, and success. It should be noted that when there are no proposals in the system, many of the offices will have nothing to do. During these times, the offices can go into a suspension mode to reduce operations and send employees home. I would encourage retainer clauses in contracts for office employees so that they are not lost when the office starts up again. With the Office of Priorities not accepting new proposals during the ruler archetype, the system will eventually clear itself of proposals. This effectively suspends operations for the offices of Priorities, Reason, Rightness, Realization, and Conscience. Democracies are typically very innovative systems, but there are times when you want to maximize innovation. For these times, the creator archetype can be used to give innovation a helpful boost. The creator archetype reconfigures the system to support discovery of new possibilities when things are stale and times are uneventful. This might be the time to use the creator archetype. Remember that civilization exists in this reality through time. It is on a journey. Where shall it go? Eventually, it will reach a point where all known possibilities have been explored, and that is when new paths must be found for exploration so that the society and its people may grow. Use the creator archetype to create new possibilities. Use the creator archetype when the nation is not living up to expectations, either when stagnation, unsatisfactory results, or poor execution is endemic in the nation. Use the creator archetype to enhance the skills of the population and seek perfection. The innocent archetype is suitable for times of great pessimism. The country is not doing well, people are unhappy, and life is full of despair. Everybody is breaking the rules, nobody gets along, and there is a real threat of civil war. When council recognizes that this is the character of the society at this time, they might find it suitable to invoke the innocent archetype. This character of the society is clearly showing what does not work. The society altogether should focus on safety and develop a culture of purpose and optimism. It must learn what is morally and ethically right in their context and update customs and culture to restore a solid way of life. The innocent archetype reconfigures the system to focus development on a new way of life that is moral and ethical. Use the innocent archetype when the nation is consistently and systematically breaking the rules without fear of punishment, when there is a need to focus on safety, purpose, and hope. Use the innocent archetype to update the moral character of the nation. The sage archetype embodies the adept handling of knowledge for which a triune democracy is known. It is the archetype that allows the nation to get back on track when it veers from the truth. It might be that over time, knowledge is lost and the people become more and more ignorant. The nation is entering a dark age. These are times when holding to what is known and wise are especially important. Knowledge along these lines must be distributed to ensure it is not lost. The sage archetype boosts education, knowledge, and wisdom in the nation. Use the sage archetype when the nation is misled or ignorant. Use the sage archetype to allow true education, knowledge, and wisdom to flourish in the nation. Above all, people love their freedom and self determination. The Council is in charge of managing a reality for the people to experience the kind of freedom that a triune democracy guarantees. They want a life worth living, and it is Council's duty to help them find it. The explorer archetype demonstrates high regard for the freedom of the people. Stagnation is unhealthy for individuals, and it is unhealthy for nations. Council invokes this archetype to lead the nation on a quest for new adventures and discoveries and to find new possibilities out there to make life worth living. Use the explorer archetype when the nation feels empty, trapped, stagnant, or the people don't believe they have enough freedom. Use the explorer archetype to find new experiences to help the population grow as humans. The outlaw archetype represents the rebel and revolutionary. He or she wants to shift power. This archetype would come into play when the character of the nation is that of powerlessness or ineffectiveness. It is focused on destructive measures to liberate the nation from mediocrity. The outlaw archetype is intended to destroy that which is not working. Through disruption and destruction, it will forge new ways of being for the society. Everybody needs a little chaos now and then, for it is part of the growth process. Managed chaos is a smart way to reduce risk. The outlaw archetype enables abilities that channel criminal activity into positive outcomes for the nation. It may be especially appropriate when powerlessness is in play because it indicates the nation is held down by another nation, which is inappropriate and damaging to itself. The outlaw archetype reconfigures the system with resources necessary to liberate itself from the situation. Use the outlaw archetype when the nation is powerless or ineffective and the creative destruction needs to happen. Use the outlaw archetype to find new paths forward via disruption and destruction. The adept nation is able to see where it is headed on its path through time. It can see positive outcomes and negative outcomes. It ought to have a vision to guide it on a prosperous path. The magician archetype is based around knowledge and power. It represents access to deep knowledge of universal law and a capability to use it to bring forth that vision. When the nation becomes blind to the negative possibilities of its actions, that is the time to inspire the people with a new vision for the future. When proposals often result in harm, that is an indication that the Office of Rightness is not doing its job effectively and that the nation has strayed from the right path. Use the magician archetype when negative consequences of proposals are frequently missed. Use the magician archetype to recalibrate rightness and find a new vision. The hero archetype represents mastery, mastery of self, mastery of the nation self, and mastery of the universe. As it relates to the nation, the hero archetype can help the nation become as strong and as capable as possible. The hero is for the warriors, the courageous, and the brave. It is best used when the times call for mass acts of bravery and courage. No nation should allow itself to become vulnerable under any circumstance. That kind of weakness can allow enemies to take advantage of the situation, whether through might or insidious action. If council recognizes that the nation has become weak, it might want to invoke the hero. Use the hero archetype when the nation is perceived as weak, vulnerable, fearful, or when the times call for great bravery. Use the hero archetype to build strength and capability. Love, in the sense of the lover archetype, is about commitment and faithfulness to each other. Without strong bonds to hold a nation together, the social contract breaks down, and this puts the nation at risk of dissolution. The breakdown of the social contract is on full display in the Western world in the latter half of 2021, where everybody hates everybody else. They need love. The loneliness epidemic is also well known, with people feeling unwanted and rejected pretty much everywhere. This is the time for the lover. The lover archetype allows the nation to focus on strengthening those social bonds to make sure the physical and psychological, mental, and noetic needs of everyone are met. I remind you at this time that the society must be competent at meeting baseline needs, for real life happens once those needs are met, and the society cannot thrive otherwise. Use the lover archetype when baseline psychological needs of the nation are not being met and loneliness is endemic. Use the lover archetype to build strong social bonds. Every society has its cultural festivities. They are needed to bring special moments of high emotions to the fore, to help lighten the world and mood of the people, and to bring a different kind of meaning to people's lives. The jester archetype is the fun archetype. An obvious example of when to use the jester is if the nation were to host the World Olympics. The jester archetype reconfigures the system to allow for rapid development of cultural festivities. In the case of the Olympics, even new infrastructure may be needed. Anytime there is a festival where fun and humor can take center stage is a good time to invoke the jester archetype for a good boost to those festivals. Of course, no archetype can be used frequently, so it might be wise to save it for particularly special festivals. Use the jester archetype when the character of the nation is one of boredom and to boost cultural festivities. Use the jester archetype to inject fun, humor, and meaning into the society and to help make life worth living for the people in it. The member archetype is about belonging. This archetype represents the builders of the society, the people actually doing the work. They want to build lasting connections with others and be part of a tight knit community. When the nation is at risk for being left behind or even of sticking out in a crowd, as in spotlighted in perhaps a negative way, is an appropriate time to invoke the member archetype. This archetype, also known as the everyman or the realist, is about keeping the society grounded in its values and principles. What are those values? Meeting baseline needs, repairing damage, fortifying strength of character, and uplifting spirituality. Use the member archetype when the nation is being left out, when the people no longer feel grounded and connected. Use the member archetype to reground in national values. The caregiver archetype is focused on service and compassionate altruism. It is a celebration of selflessness and the service to other mindset. It is an archetype which generates inspiration, generosity, and gratitude, and is another key to helping keep a community intact. Ingratitude and selfishness are dangerous to a nation. It is one of the factors that lead into degeneration. When council senses that the nation is heading into ingratitude, selfishness, or even being taken for granted, that is a good time to invoke the caregiver archetype. The caregiver encourages the nation to perform acts of kindness among the people and even among other nations. It is designed to teach people to care for and protect those around them, hopefully cultivating a sense of loyalty to each other. Use the caregiver archetype when the nation is perceived as selfish, ungrateful, and being taken for granted. Use the caregiver archetype to encourage kindness, compassion, empathy, and generosity. Archetypes facilitate a way of operating the nation that is more long term focused and purposeful than routine short term budgetary adjustments. Those can still be made, of course, but using the archetypes can help build a meaningful culture. Every member of the society will be able to relate to at least one, and each will have the ability to shine and be their very best when their archetype is active. Archetypes are a powerful lever the Council of Witness has in its toolbox. There must be rules associated with their use to prevent abuse. Only one archetype can be active at a time. An archetype can only be active for a defined period of time. Once an archetype has been used, it cannot be used again until a period of time has elapsed that is the active time period multiplied by 6. No archetype can be used twice in a row. The active time period for an archetype could be 6 months, a year, or even 4 years to really give it meaning. This means any given archetype cannot be used again for another 3 years, 6 years, or 24 years. I leave that up to a nation to decide in their constitution what time period is appropriate. Active archetypes may be ended at any time. It is recommended that notice be given sometime before an archetype goes active to give people a chance to prepare. Archetypes make significant budgetary adjustments in the system, and that will affect people both positively and negatively. As well, if there are cultural events related to an archetype, people will want time to prepare. Archetypes may be used in accordance with a calendar. Before I put forth some suggestions, let us go into modes a bit further. Modes help a nation develop itself following a stair-step pattern. The horizontal mode is focused on stability and building capacity for the next tier in the stair-step. The vertical mode is focused on growth and development of that next tier. Then the mode cycle repeats. Modes tie into baseline needs. They are about establishing a standard of living and then building up to the next standard of living. To get to the next standard requires research and capacity to get there, which requires time. So you hold at the current mode until the next one can be proven and rolled out. I have used a stair-step pattern to describe modes with horizontal and vertical stages, but using a breath pattern might be more appropriate. With the breath pattern, the horizontal mode becomes an inhale mode, and the vertical mode becomes an exhale mode. The nation then actually has the ability to breathe. The inhale mode is focused on setting up for the next exhale mode. It is a time for preparation. During this mode, the nation should focus on researching new technologies and planning the next generation of infrastructure. Researching new technologies does not have to be specifically technological. It could also be techniques or new strategies or even psychic and consciousness research. It is a time to focus on learning the law, as in the rules that determine how this reality works. Planning the next generation of infrastructure takes time. It also takes research. What kind of infrastructure should be built? How will it affect the environment? How can we best utilize the laws that we know to build the most effective infrastructure? How can we build it in a way that minimizes maintenance? How can we keep things organized and optimized for our population? All of these questions require time and research to answer. It is optimal to use archetypes that maximize research and planning during an inhale mode. Cycling through different archetypes that boost research and planning can sustain the in-breath of preparation. It is also important to be ever conscious of the fact that the nation, as a triune democracy, is a custodian of a particular reality for its people. That reality is a nation designed after the self and is an effort to passively show the people what they are and how they work so that they can consciously recognize and better themselves. The nation should be cautious to avoid technological traps that injure this desire, such as transhumanism. This is a useful guide to know what research to pursue and what research not to pursue. The exhale mode is focused on bringing forth what was prepared in the inhale mode. This is a time for building. During this mode, the nation should focus on construction or any other kind of manifestation. The exhale mode brings forth what was researched and planned during the inhale mode. New technologies that were researched and discovered can now be implemented. New plans for infrastructure that were developed can be realized and built. Exhale mode is construction season, but it can last for years. It is optimal to use archetypes that maximize manifestation during an exhale mode. Cycling through different archetypes that boost manifestation can sustain the outbreath of construction. As well, shifting funds around in a predictable pattern allows the nation to do more with a minimal budget. Funds that were used for research during the inhale mode can now be used for construction during the exhale mode. Then they go back to research in the next inhale mode. During inhale, the construction industry can rest. During exhale, the research industry can rest. Rest is an important prerequisite for creativity and spirituality. The economy of the nation should be designed to work with these cycles and support people during rest periods. We want a steady state, stress tolerating, breathing economy that works with nature and slowly but surely grows the nation. There are many configurations of archetypes and modes possible, and not all can or will be used at all times. As a Triune Democracy develops, it might make sense to use an archetype calendar to keep things predictable and consistent. Such a tool would allow people to prepare for archetypes and their respective events in advance. The following is just one possible suggestion for a calendar showing the archetypes used in a particular sequence. In the inhale mode, the sage, the magician, the creator, the explorer, the outlaw, the innocent. For the exhale mode, the caregiver, the member, the jester, the hero, the lover, and the ruler. If there is no emperor or empress present for the ruler, it is skipped and a period of no archetype is had. A triune democracy is an automated direct democracy. You bring the change you want to see. The system processes proposals to ensure they are reasonable, right, conscionable, and balanced. The automated nature of the system and procedural guarantee of the quality of proposals mitigates the incessant need to vote on every single issue in a typical direct democracy. Leadership is obtained from the people who may make proposals if they are qualified. Leadership is also obtained from a unified council and occasionally an emperor. A triune democracy is modeled after a triune self. You are a triune self. It is your internal operation, your soul. You have a process that facilitates proper thinking and adaptation in your being. A triune democracy scales that process up to the civilizational level so that the society may think in aggregate and reason its way through time. As this system reflects your own internal operation, it is hoped that it will one day inspire and uplift the people just by them watching its operation. The system looks complicated, but if you know how you work, it is actually pretty simple. It's just a loop of the thought process scaled up. Triune democracies are built around respect. You operate in a certain way. The corruption of that way causes damage to your being, which manifests as psychological and mental health issues as well as corrupted thinking. Self respect are actions you take to prevent damage to your being, to keep yourself in proper working order. The proper practice of self respect prevents psychological and mental disorders and also prevents corruption to your being and thus your thinking. And this is why you never, ever allow anything to breach your boundaries. Scaled up, the practices of self respect, morality, and honor, encoded in the Triune Democratic way of running a society, ensure that the society itself never becomes corrupted and damaged. This in turn leads to a way of leadership that does not cause harm. Here is the procedure. You bring a proposal to the Office of Priorities. The Office of Priorities processes and prioritizes the proposal. It may triage or invoke debates, presentations, trials, or other prioritization schemes as needed. Some proposals may warrant local or national referendums, and those are carried out by this office. Accepted proposals are passed to the Office of Reason in priority order. The Office of Reason receives a proposal and tries to answer the question, is it reasonable? It considers input from the Office of Priorities. It analyzes the proposal for reasonableness, motive, and balance. The proposal is indexed against a knowledge base of thoughts aligned with universal law and converted to legislative language or code if applicable. The analysis is attached to the proposal and is passed to the Office of Rightness. The Office of Rightness receives a proposal from the Office of Reason and tries to answer the question, will it cause harm? It considers harm to the people, harm to the environment, harm to treaty arrangements, harm to the nation, and any other type of harm potential. Where harm cannot be determined, it will simulate the proposal in a controlled environment to determine the answer. The analysis is attached to the proposal and it proceeds to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. The Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data receives proposals from the Office of Rightness and tries to answer the question, how does it work? It gathers as much data as possible related to the proposal from its many sources and attaches it to the proposal. It performs rudimentary tests on the proposal to see how it performs. It tries to determine hidden unmet needs or other considerations from the proposal. Data from all analysis attached to the proposal are added to its knowledge base. Where the proposal requires additional data, this office may seek it out from the environment, allies, or the people. Processed proposals are passed to the Office of Priorities. The proposal returns to the Office of Priorities. If the proposal is mature, it is submitted to the Council of Witness. If the proposal is not yet mature, it is reprioritized and submitted to the Office of Reason again. If the Office of Rightness found harm in the proposal, or if the Office of Conscience found it to be unconscionable, it is sent back to the issuer to be modified or is rejected. The Council of Witness reviews mature proposals. It provides a final approval, veto, and balancing of the proposal. If a further balancing is required, a note will be attached to the proposal and it will be returned to the Office of Priorities. Approvals require a unified council vote. Vetoes require only one vote. Approved proposals are sent to the Office of Manifestation for implementation. The Office of Manifestation implements approved proposals. It uses a reality organizing system consisting of realms and the thought of above below to properly categorize and consider the requirements, consequences, and physics of implementation. It is optimized for infrastructure, but can also do legislation. The office issues requests for proposals or hires contractors or businesses directly. This office is also responsible for bringing Triune Democracy to the local level. For the supporting offices, the Office of Realization intercepts proposals from the Office of Priorities and analyzes them for historical mistakes. It tries to answer the question, are we repeating history? It analyzes history for similar proposals as well as future trends to determine if this proposal would steer society down a similar path. It prepares a possibility analysis of likely outcomes and attaches it to the proposal. Outcomes where history repeats are indicated with a warning. The process proposal is passed along to the Office of Reason. The Office of Conscience intercepts proposals from the Office of Rightness and tries to answer the question, is it conscionable? It provides an important backup function to guarantee the rightness of any particular proposal. It further helps the nation avoid trespasses and unconscionable actions against its people or against other people. It prevents the nation from being in unconscionable positions. This specialized office uses data from the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data and can poll the population to help it answer its question. It may seek advice from people with exceptionally developed characters and consult law books. Its analysis is attached to the proposal, which is then sent to the Office of Feeling, Sensing, Perception, and Data. The Office of the I-A is a feedback office. It receives feedback from the Office of Manifestation and delivers it to the Council of Witness. Feedback occurs after implementation of a proposal. It looks for anything unexpected, such as cost overruns, unexpected developments, or mistakes. It investigates why something unexpected happens and seeks to uncover the root of that unknown knowledge. The issuer of a proposal will be frequently involved as the proposal makes its way through the system. There is a circuit in the system, and all proposals go through it at least once, but many proposals may go through the circuit several times. Every time there is a change to a proposal, it must go through the circuit again. Each time there is a change or refinement, the issuer will be involved to guide the change, approve the change, or even make the change. Sometimes the issuer will have to defend their proposal. Other times he or she will have to educate the people. Smaller versions of the Triune Democratic system are available for small towns. Local offices can be networked with the main offices to make the power of the system available in your local community. The system can run with as few as 6 people. Representation is achieved via the Council of Witness, which uses qualified elected representatives. The council is balanced by region, race, or other criteria, and by sex. The lowest leadership level of the Office of Manifestation is also an elected position for people who are qualified. All other positions in the system are filled based on qualifications and need, like any job. Direct democracies are faced with a trilemma problem in which all 3 characteristics must be satisfied to be acceptable. Participation, they must facilitate widespread participation in the decision-making process by the people affected. Deliberation, They must facilitate rational discussion where all major points of view are weighted according to their evidence. Equality. All members of a population on whose behalf decisions are made have an equal chance of having their views taken into account. The above are desirable characteristics of an ideal system of direct democracy. So far, they have proven to be elusive in various direct democracy schemes, with only two out of the three being met. A triune democracy solves the trilemma as follows. Participation. Any qualified participant may submit proposals to the Office of Priorities. They may also monitor, intercept, and vote on proposals when they are at the prioritization stage. Everyone in affected areas may vote regardless of qualifications when such voting is performed. Note that qualifications are determined by character development. This is a necessary security control on the system. If everyone in the population has sufficiently developed characters, then everyone can participate. Deliberation. Rational discussion is obtained via the offices of priorities, reason, rightness, feeling, sensing, perception, and data, realization, and conscience, and with the direct participation of the proposer. The Office of Priorities further adds to the discussion with debates, presentations, trials, votes, and any other mechanism as required. The system is geared towards building and understanding the thought behind the proposal, of which collecting perspectives is a necessary part. Equality. Most of the time, decisions are made on behalf of other people, whether they originate with a member of council or from your fellow countrymen. Not everyone has time to vote on every issue all the time, and sometimes voting isn't even necessary. A triune democracy's automated design and structure helps guarantee the interests of everyone at all times due to this requirement. The Council of Witness is balanced by race or region and sex to ensure no harm is done on these fronts and that those views are taken into account. The above offices, together with council, ensure as many perspectives as possible are taken into account and that no proposal is passed that would cause harm to anyone. A triune democracy is a proposal processing engine that supports the nation and is open to any member of the nation to access. It helps the people and the leaders of the nation make good decisions and manage the nation competently. It does all of this without fear of corruption and infiltration. There are two directions leadership comes from in this system. The bottom, the grassroots level, the people on the ground who are closest to the needs of the nation. Leadership also comes from the top, from council, from people who are educated in international law, the law of nations, the law of thought, people who know where to take a nation. In both cases, their voices are heard in the form of a proposal and processed by the system. In both cases, the people lead from their position, whatever their perspective may be, whatever their duties may be. This is what makes the system democratic. All voices can be heard. Each contributes a perspective to a thought. The system builds knowledge of and competence with the thought and uses that to build better policy and intelligently navigate the nation in this reality through time along a predominantly ascendant trajectory. That knowledge is shared and available to everyone so that all may benefit and grow. Democratic leadership begets knowledge gain, which helps uplift everybody. The system's purpose is what it does, and this is what a triune democracy is all about. Humanity must learn from its mistakes. It cannot fall into a planetary tyranny again. Therefore, a triune democracy solves the left right political paradigm by taking things up to the level of a whole thought, detects, mitigates, and prevents infiltration attempts due to the use of a character test and the Office of Identity, minimizes use of elections to minimize cheating and rigging possibilities, favors career and lifetime positions to further dissuade infiltration, empowers individual thought where that thought is right. The system favors rightness and full knowledge to mitigate against peer pressure, requires that all who participate are qualified by the strength of their character, since elections do not guarantee qualifications, detects and rewards meritocratic leadership over anti meritocratic betrayal. By design, both due to the council and the offices of rightness and conscience, prevents genocides and democides. By design, all that really matters is that the offices perform their functions. How they do this is irrelevant so long as it is within the nation. Even if somebody were to game the character test, they would not have much influence over the system or its direction, not any more influence than any other member of the society. And by design, the highest position of emperor serves under the threat of death. With such a great responsibility, the slightest deviation from honor reverts the system to normal operation, recognizes the need for people to maintain their integrity as well as the damage that can be done when this is trespassed, prevents the population from falling into perdition and mind control. Triune democracies are far more complex than the current three-branch design found in representative democracies. It is not merely a system of checks and balances, but one of anti-corruption by design. There are 6 offices: identity, rightness, conscience, priorities, realization, and reason, and a council dedicated to ensuring that no proposal is corrupt in any way before it is implemented, and 2 offices, identity and I-A, that specifically look for corruption after the fact. The entire process is one of refinement and narrowing to arrive at the best possible course of action. The Office of Identity has its own police force to specifically attack corruption within the system, and they have the ability to dismantle and rebuild corrupt offices from their templates as needed. No singular office can apprehend the system and wield power. All are limited to their functions, and only their functions are required for the system to operate. Only the emperor can commandeer the entire system, but he or she can only do so if he or she is supremely qualified and has risked his or her life several times, and even then, the emperor serves under a guillotine. There is a rock, paper, scissors dynamic between the Office of Identity, the Emperor, and the Council of Witness to further mitigate corruption in these 3 core offices. Every position is guarded by a test of character that specifically evaluates people on how corruptible they are. Elections do not prove qualifications. We test their beings to ensure they are operating correctly, because the slightest deviation can be manipulated by enemy actors and used to control them and corrupt the system. Even if someone were to gain the character test successfully, the system will not allow them to gain control. Lastly, it truly is a system for the people. There is no royal lineage, no family dynasties, and no party politics that get in the way of navigating a triune democratic civilization in this reality through time. Before I started this project, I learned the importance of showcasing 2 systems side by side. I learned that it is not enough to show you why the present system is bad. I have to show you what a properly functioning system looks like so that you can compare what I propose versus what you understand and see the difference. That is when you become curious, you realize what I'm saying has merit, and you learn how things ought to be, and you become inspired to bring that vision forth. This video has showcased a template design for a new type of democracy. A triune democracy is a self-learning, self-correcting, autonomous direct democracy. It is a self-governing system of governance for a self-governing people. It is a democratic system modeled after the self, your very soul, so that you may see yourself in it, learn from it, better yourself because of it, and maybe even one day move beyond any need for it. From this template, a constitution can be written for a new kind of society, a new kind of nation that can assume its separate and equal station among the family of nations. A nation geared, once again, towards a free and just society and offers something precious, new, and uplifting for humanity. Triune democracies can lead the way to a healthier new world for humanity. They are an organizing system for cooperation and coordination among peoples and a stepping stone to a world where no government is needed. There are 2 paths before humanity now. The default path has humanity progressing into a medical and technological tyranny. Your bodies will be mutilated in such a way as to no longer support souls, and they will be permanently embedded into a mixed reality framework which will trap them. This is an aberration of what it means to be human. Your bodies will become more machine than human, but little thinking there was will be terminated, and in the end, what was once a beautiful species will be a plague across the galaxy. This was your destiny. The intervention path has a slice of humanity deviating from the tyrannical course. It will strengthen its connections with what it means to be human, regain conscious contact with their souls, establish friendships throughout the galaxy, and build a healthy civilization with healthy human beings. This can be your future. As the intervention path grows, the tyrannical path will slowly lose power over time and fade from existence. This is how we save our species, but we cannot do it without bettering ourselves and our thinking. We must rise to ever higher heights. To support us along the intervention path, a new society built on the law of thought and the law of nations in accordance with international law and customs and using a triune democratic form of government is proposed. It will uplift us by showing us what it means to be triune selves or souls, and support us as we take responsibility and total control of ourselves, and therefore total freedom for ourselves as we journey into another, more meaningful level of existence. By this method, we repair ourselves, we uplift ourselves, and we guarantee our destiny on our terms. At the end of 2021, there is a risk of a communications blackout as well as a pole shift. If I alone were to implement the vision described in this video, I could not guarantee its success, for if anything were to happen to me, it would die with me. You must archive this work, print your own copy, keep it safe, and get to work on building the society described herein among your own ever expanding group following the path of self determination. Or you can join up with an existing Triune Democracy if you come across one. We are all united in bringing forth a Triune Democracy, and in the future, we can unite the various Triune Democratic societies together into a proper civilization. It is all about our best thinking, and here it is in a positive light. The template design presented in this video is an idea, and one that was designed in the ideal. You can make it your own and address issues that are relevant to you. As long as the core operation of the system is consistent with that of a triune self, the rest is changeable, though it will function best as close to the ideal as is possible. We free ourselves from tyranny by building a new vehicle that sidesteps it. Their tyrannical rules no longer apply to us because we are not members of their society. We are members of our new society and are foreigners to them. We wish them well and try to set a good example for them, but we know deep down that their path is not ours. Ours is a path of freedom, respect, love, and enlightenment. You know what these are, and you know what a healthy society looks like. Now go build it.